Hi everybody, and today, welcome to today's event where we'll have focused on the growth company in the Nordic region. We have had a hard time due to external factors. The interest has been pressuring this sector, but I think maybe the tides are changing and people should start looking more at the companies and what they maybe be facing in 23. I know macro-wise we don't know, and that's why, of course, we are in the helicopter in today's event, but trying to give an impression of what does the company do, the business model, the investment case, but also a look into 23 and why and how effective will this company or the companies be on the 23. The presentation will last 15 to 20 minutes, and then there will be 5 to 10 minutes Q&A. As always, you can ask questions in the box down below. Do it currently. We run the presentation, and then we keep the questions in the end. Also, under you will see the agenda for today. We have a slight change. Duncan Farmer, unfortunately, cancelled, but rematch will be joining at that point in time. So today will end a little bit earlier. So maybe that's nice. But for now, I think, Marcus, I will hand the call over to you.
Thank you very much, Michael, and welcome to all participants and listeners today. My name is Marcus Hammer, and I'm the CEO of Bawat Water Technologies. We have an agenda today where I primarily will focus very quickly on what we do and why we do it, and then picking up the line from Michael on exactly how Bawat is maneuvering in a turmoil world as of today. So looking at two main things is the market that we operate in, why we are not affected, and our business model, why we think that is very strong relative to the market and the market environment we are listening today. And the end, I'll try to sum up on the points that I will go through during the course of the day. And as Michael said, I'm happy to take questions in the end. So Bawat means ballast water technology, and that's exactly what we do. We treat ballast water. And ballast water, we treat it for invasive species because invasive species in the marine sector is moved around in the world with ballast water today. Ballast water in ships is used to keep the ship stable, irrespective of whether it's with cargo or not with cargo. And as cargo is moved around the world, so is ballast also. And ballast water is creating a lot of havoc in the world, both financially and from a maritime point of view. I won't go into details of that today. You're more than welcome to visit our homepage or look at the challenges that ballast water is creating in the world today. But it's a regulated market, and I'll come back to that because that's very interesting for our business case and as a company. Our solution in Bawat is the only green solution on the market today, and I'll quickly take you through how we work, because we are actually using heat as a treatment methodology to kill invasive species in ballast water. And we do that in two different ways. We either do it on board the ships themselves when they sail around in the world, or we do it via mobile systems that can be placed in ports and yards, meaning that we can take the ballast water from the ship at quayside and treat it. But both systems are built on the very fundamental things that we are using heat. And by using heat, we can then have a system that is very, very effective to kill invasive species. We've seen heat being used as pasteurization for years in the food technology. And we, as the first and only ones, have now also applied it in the space of ballast water to kill marine species there. Our system, and this is important for understanding our business case, is built on complete standardized equipment. So if you look at the pictures both on top and below, you see very common things like a pump, a heat exchangers, piping. Down below you see a furnace, you see a container. So all standardized equipment that can be used in our footprint. The market, this was just a little bit about who we are and what we do, but the market as such, and this is why it's interesting when we look at a turmoil time that we're in now, is that it's a fully regulated market. So the IMO, which is the International Maritime Organization under the UN, has, with all its country states, signed what's called a ballast water convention, which regulates the quality of the discharge water. That means, in principle, that there must not be invasive species in any water that you deballast. That means that there is a very large pool of existing ships that needs to live up to this regulatory demand. And there is also a pool for new ships coming out, being built year on year, that needs to live up to this. The IMO have decided that there is a 5-year grace period starting in 2019 and ending 2024 for the existing ships to live up to this discharge criteria. So right now, there is a very large race to install equipment on board ships, both retrofit, meaning the existing pools of ships that we have in the world today, but also new build ships. Actually, new build ship has, as of 2017, having to live up to this discharge criteria. It's not only the IMO that has enforced this, they have enforced it for the entire world, and then the US Coast Guard has, for the US waters, enforced its own regulations. In practical, the regulations are more or less similar. But for Bawat point of view is that we have the approvals in order to sell both to the US side, the US Coast Guard, and the IMO side. So, and this is very important, because if you own a ship today that is maybe only IMO regulated with your equipment, then you cannot enter US waters. But the Bawat equipment works on both US and IMO side. This gives us what we call both a short-term, medium-term, and a long-term opportunity in a very, very large and very regulated market that is not affected by, let's say, the turmoil of the world that we see today. So short-term, we are looking at an enormous amount of vessels that needs to be retrofitted. It's an estimated between 60 to 75,000 ships or vessels today need to live up to the Ballast Water Convention when we exit it and when it's fully implemented in September 2024. We believe that already half or even more of these vessels are probably also already retrofitted, but it leaves still approximately 30,000 plus minus of vessels that needs to live up to this deballasting regulation. That gives a very, very large push right now in the next 2 years in order to complete all of these retrofit. The push is actually so large that we foresee that this will extend somewhat longer, simply because we don't see there is capacity enough in the market to deliver all of this. Secondly, there is a new build program every year. New ships are coming in. So between 1,500 to 2,000 ships are coming into the global market every year, where Bawat is also capable of selling its technology. Of course, these vessels here will be somewhat more prone to the activity on the world market, but even in the worst of times, we've never seen the new building ships fall below 1,200 a year. That's a long, continuously ongoing market. Then there's a mid and long-term market as well for what we see for our mobile solutions, where we can service in both in ports and yards and delivering both the hardware for customers who want to operate it themselves, but we are also delivering a service where we are receiving untreated ballast water, and then we are treating it for the customer at a service basis where they pay us at a per cubic meter cost. Today, I don't have too much time, but just saying that this is a starting market. We are first movers. We are by far the only one that can do it due to the technology that we have, which is a one-pass technology. So that means that we are basically operating in a fully regulated market, as the ports themselves are also regulated by the Port State Control under the same discharge convention. Our business model, and this is, I think, also very key for the discussion today, is, as you could see before, it's standard equipment. That means, and this is important to understand, we do not have any own manufacturing in Bawat. We are an engineering company. So we buy the hardware that we put together in a package and sell it together with a design plan to our customers, usually the ship owners, and then they will install our equipment on a shipyard. But it also means that even though we are a small company, we have a very, very large manufacturing footprint available, because as we are using standard components, we have our sub-suppliers are very large global players, and we can use them as we want. So if we don't get a good price for one, we speak with another and get a good price there. And in terms of now where we see global turmoil, then it's a huge advantage for us that we don't have a large manufacturing footprint that tie up our capital. We have, with this business model, we have a positive cash flow on all our projects, which basically means that we are not tying up cash neither in the projects, nor in inventory, nor in machines, or in any of our manufacturing footprint. So we are a fully engineered company, and thus we are not depending on, let's say, that we have to fill a manufacturing plant or similar. And this goes actually for all the three products that we have, both for the ship solutions, but also for our mobile solutions, but also for our service model. Because our service model, we have joint venture companies with partners locally in ports that operates our equipment. We sell the equipment to the joint venture partners, and then they operate it, and the cash flow comes positively back to Bawat. So on all three business legs that we stand on, we see a positive cash flow, and we are not tying cash up in turmoil times. As Michael said, cash is king these days. So if I look at the few conclusions on what we have discussed today, I think the key point here is really to understand that we operate in a fully regulated market, both for IMO and for US Coast Guard. And this goes both for the existing fleet of vessels, but also for the new build vessels that is coming into the market today. So the volume in the market is fairly easy to predict. The only large, let's say, unknown is how many new build ships that is coming into the market. But irrespective of whether we would see a small downturn there, it is still a very, very large market for a player like Bawat. We also see a port market and a yard market where we are first movers with our technology and our ballast water as a service. This is a market that is in similar way regulated by the port state control, who are in charge of making sure that whatever ships comes into port and deballast, that deballasting lives up to the regulation on the IMO and US Coast Guard Convention. So here we are influenced primarily by the volume of the global trade, which of course could go down a little bit, but the overall volume in the global trade that we have today is enormous relative to the service that we can supply. So that's on the market side. On let's say the robustness of our business model side, our supply chain is fully based on standardized components, where we, even as a small company, have very large manufacturing plants available, since our sub-suppliers are very large, well-known global suppliers that can supply to us across the world where our customers are located. So we don't have any own manufacturing, and that's key to understand. When we look at what the market has looked at in the last, let's say, 6 to 9 months, and especially after the war started in Ukraine, we saw a immediately hike. If you look at the graph that I have put in, this is actually an overview of the cost for a standardized stainless steel commodity called hot rolled coil, which is a good indicator of, let's say, some of the raw material that goes into our product, whether it being a pump or whether it's being a heat exchanger or whether it's being piped for the solution. So you can see a peak to the right. This is actually when the war started in Ukraine. But since then, we've actually seen a very large fall in cost for this commodity stainless steel as raw material. And this is actually a good indication of what we have also seen. So despite, the discussion on very high inflation across the supply chain, the raw material into the supply chain is actually falling and has been falling for quite a while. So if we look at stainless steel, but also if we look at titanium, which is one of the key components in our heat exchangers, we are actually back to levels that we call pre-corona, from, let's say, from a world where we knew the dynamics more, that were more predictable. So on steel and hardware, we are seeing now that the prices is actually going in our direction. And more importantly, we are also seeing that supply chain times is now very much back to what it used to be. So we saw an increase under Corona. The supply chain time were increasing. But now we are back to, let's say, it's actually buyer's market, which is very good for us, because that means that in terms of competitiveness, we are actually seeing that the inflation is not really harming our competitiveness, as we can both get a price and a delivery time that we are expecting relative to our budget, also looking into 2023. Last point here is actually on electrical components. We saw earlier this year and last year also that there was a challenge getting some specific electrical components due to shortage out of China. A lot of Chinese factories were shut down or running on low level due to Corona. But this is actually also completely softened up. And the two main electrical suppliers that we are using for our business have actually, since of November this year, been back to pre-Corona delivery times and prices. We are also protecting ourselves, even though it's standard equipment. We have a couple of, let's say, long lead items that can be a shortage of, that we learned under Corona. And we have those items, it's primarily electrical items. We have them in stock with our main suppliers at their cost. So we always have X amount of, let's say, vessel solutions ready that can be sold from stock, so we don't have any problems on delivery, which is also one of our, let's say, key selling points, that we can supply faster than most of our competitors. So last 2 points. Gross margin, I think, is a key point here, that we are seeing being influenced by either inflation or growing prices or difficulty in delivering. We have not experienced that. And actually, as we also reported on our Q3 results, we are actually, confirming our gross margin sales and gross margin percentages on our sales, and are also forecasting that the more mobile solutions we get into our mix going forward, that we will actually increase relative to what we saw originally. Working capital, as I said, is positive on all our projects. So even in these tough times, we are not tying cash up in our company simply due to growth, but we can actually deliver cash as we grow the company in the scaling side of the business that we are in now. Thank you very much.
Marcus, should we take some questions? And I should have said cash is king. I didn't, but I'm glad that you reminded me of it and how important that will also be. The first question is actually on the gross margin side. You're saying you are able to maintain it. Is that compared to the IPO expectation? Because I guess when you have gone this much up, and we all maybe already back on the component side, some prices might stick out in that you can sell your system a little bit more expensive. So a little bit elaboration, or is everything given to the customer also by your competitors?
No, what we see is that relative to the IPO numbers that we gave, we can see that with the product mix, that especially with mobile system and service coming in, that we can increase it somehow. And also the potential increase that we see on inflation from our sub-suppliers, simply by looking at volume business from our side in terms of purchasing, and purchasing in volume and having more business. That means that we are actually, as we grow, we are also a more interesting partner for our sub-suppliers, and that is also reflected in the prices that we can get from them. So this is why I'm saying so far we are not seeing inflation hit our gross margin, because we have means to combat it, and we have also not pushed the inflation onwards to our customers yet, because we are happy as it is right now, so and like to stay competitive.
Perfect. Then there's a question here from the outside. You have much bigger orders in mobile solution. Cash is king. Everything is restrained. You have also restrained capacity in your company to sell and project. Will you focus more on that in a restrained way, or will it still be a dual activity by you, where you both go for the ship solution and the mobile solutions?
No, it will be a dual activity, because quite a lot of the customers are actually the same. So from the sales force point of view, it makes sense to focus on both things. And from a long-term perspective, it's also important that the customers understand that our technology works well on the ships, because that will give them confidence that it will also work on the mobile solutions on shore. So yes, short term, we stay very much focused on the retrofit, but we're also focusing very much now on the new build side of the market, making sure that we are on the relevant makers list for the yards that build new ships. So we are ready for that transition in 2 years. And then we will look at new build and mobile solutions and service. So all three legs is what we are building the company on.
Then there's a question, and maybe Tupac, you touched upon it. Some part of the shipping market have less to do now. You have been talking about when ships are fully booked, they don't go to yard and get retrofitted, right? So is that a small positive for you? I know it's a part of the shipping market that is getting less to do, not the tanker market. And then the second question here is, 23, it should be a banner year. Everybody needs to retrofit, or September 24, right? But it's a very short time span. Do you expect those, you might say, orders or the regulations will be postponed? So firstly, is it helpful to you that the shipping market is maybe not that busy? And secondly, is it still too busy that IMO will ever have the real effect in 24?
I think the effect on that slowdown in the shipping market means that a lot of customers are actually turning and doing the retrofit rather than asking for extensions, because they are try to make money on the ongoing business. So there is a push towards that. From an installation point of view, our system can actually be installed while sailing if there's space is enough. So we have actually seen customers that can run operation and still install the ballast system. From a 2024 meeting the regulation point of view, I think it's anybody's best guess whether it will be extended or not. But we can see at least that the flag states that are giving the extensions are getting more and more tough. So shipping owners that has tried to extend for 1 or 2 times because they said they were busy, they are simply not getting extensions anymore. So I think the regulatory arm is pushing to have it end by September 24, but whether in practical, that's a different discussion. Personally, when you ask me, I don't think it will be extended, but I think there will be people that will go beyond the deadline and are allowed, if they can go out and say that they have signed a contract with a company like Bawat or are in the process of installing. I think there will be some flex in that sense, but a real extension, I doubt that. Only there will be flexibility in the timing.
And then last question, I think we have time for it, Marcus. A lot of new sales agents was announced. Will that have full effect in 23? I know there's a run-in time, and you also need to prep them, and they need to go out and understand and sell your solution. So will that have a full effect?
I think that will have a full effect in 2023, and also with the startup of new salespeople in our organization, that should also have effect in 2023. So I'm quite certain that when we will go out and announce our forecast for 2023, that you will see it will be a significant hike relative to where we're coming from in 2022. And this is also, of course, what we are trying to communicate all the time, that we are on a positive track towards break even. But it's with this type of business, it's all about timing, and it's all about getting enough orders at the right time. But as stated also in the Q3 message, the pipeline and the quoting pipeline that we have looks very good and growing. So we are comfortable about and confident about the future.
I know you have a board meeting. I will leave you to that, Marcus. Thank you very much for answering the question and doing the presentation.
Welcome back, everyone. We now have the pleasure to welcome Agillic, a SaaS company providing an omnichannel marketing automation platform. And today, Agillic is represented by the company's CEO, Emre Gürsoy, and also CFO, Claus Boysen. So first of all, a warm welcome to you. Before I will hand over the word to you, I will just remind the audience that, as always, you can ask your questions in the comment box below. And with that, I will hand over the word to you, Emre and Claus.
Thank you very much, Kasper, and thank you very much for the invitation. Let's just jump in just into the story, because I really like to spare some time for questions and discussions as much as possible. So let's first and foremost, let's start with what we do. Agillic is a technology company. We operate within the marketing technology space. And what we call ourselves is an omnichannel marketing automation platform. The platform has the same name. And what we do is specifically focusing on utilization of first-party data from our clients, various activities regarding to their customers, combine it with the content that they would like to communicate with their customer base, and do this across all channels via no agnostic thinking, and making sure that everybody gets the messages that they are interested to do that. So it's right time, right message via the right channel. Now, why is this important? Because it brings a kind of a customer experience where this directly connects with various different type of business results. Is higher conversion, increased customer lifetime value, elimination of churn. These are all the kind of business elements that are highly relevant. So we like to see ourselves as one of an important business results oriented company. If I give a couple of highlights on the big picture, these are results that we have shared on our Q3 numbers. Our overall total ARR is around 70 million. We have concluded Q3 with a minus 300,000 on our EBITDA, which we are hoping to complete the year, third time in a row. This will be the third year in a row we'll be closing with a positive EBITDA. We are 47 employees. If you compare it to last year, same time, it's almost the same. Since 2018, we have been on the First North NASDAQ, and of that geographies that we are looking at, we have 111 clients from multiple markets. And what I like to say that we're 100% technology company. We do not do any professional services. So what you're seeing as our numbers, they're all directed to our SaaS business. Going back one step to how we are doing what we're doing is that we like to call ourselves that we are delivering personalized communication to millions, which is basically bringing the data and content and messaging to the end user. And the way that we do that is utilizing data, the data that the first-party data that our clients are collecting via various different activities that they run their business with. This could be transactional data, e-commerce data. This could be their behavioral data of their customers, or any other activities that they have been collecting data from. Now, this is all connected via multiple other technologies that we integrate into. So we are not one for all, but we are a best of breed in marketing automation, but we work with the data that is collected within the company and activate this data to its maximum. Now, why is this important? It's terribly important, and it's highly relevant, because in the days that we are living, the third-party data, the new regulations around everything regarding protection of the customer data brings the first-party data as one of the most important elements and most valuable assets of any company. Now, any company, because if you look at the client base that we are operating, it's quite broad. We are working with multiple different industries, and what is unique about most of these ones is that they're all working with first-party data, and they are building their businesses based on first-party data utilization. Now, we take one step forward, working with these kind of activities, working with first-party data. What we define ourselves as Agillic is becoming more and more of a growth engine for the clients that we're working with. These are a couple of examples. There are multiple videos that we're putting about our clients and their business results on our website. I would highly recommend to watch some of these. It's all about uniting how to get the most out of first-party data and increase the utilization of the assets within the company to create business results. As I said, these business results could be improved sales, it could be elimination of churn, it could be a subscription increase across the board. Now, this is happening because there's also another side of the medallion. On the other side of the medallion, which is basically the customers, they are demanding that kind of messaging being personalized. They're giving their data. In return, they want relevance, they want timely messaging, and that relationship is becoming stronger and stronger. And those who are not following and not uniting that, they're actually going to be the losers in that space. Now, what does that mean? Now, if you look at, we have done a research previously this year, and this is done across Europe, and we looked at what are the main elements of omni-channel marketing automation and the relationship between the customer and the brands that they're working with. And what we have seen is more and more the companies are expecting more operational success, more results orientation, return investment, faster time to value, which is basically faster time to get return investment and value out of these activities. And we have also worked with one of the thought leaders that we are, Franz Riviera. He's from Benelux, and he's working very much, he's one of the leading thought leaders in Europe at the moment regarding marketing technology, MarTech in general. He has done a research, and it is obvious that there's an increasing interest and still continuing investment to the MarTech space, to the technology space altogether. Besides, we have also looked at Gartner. We have also looked at their way of defining how they see the future in the coming year, because we are now once again we are operating within another year of business not usual, and that means that we are operating together with our clients very closely, how they can get the most out of the investment that they're putting together. But what we have realized that digital investments are continuously increasing. I mean, one of the reasons that, for example, Gartner has done the research with the IT departments, and they've seen that the investments are going forward, and the part that they're investing most is the software part, because everybody knows that the efficiency, the effectiveness that you expect to deliver will be mostly driven by software, which is basically the technology investments. So this is just a big picture on how we are seeing it, how we are seeing the space and the movement moving into the 2023. And just before I put the word to on the financial side with Claus, I just want to mention that we started the year with a specific guidance of how we are seeing it. There was a growth across the board, and then later on we have uplifted our guidance twice, and in multiple areas. We see the year quite a successful year that we are completing, and if you live up to our guidance, which we will be completing the year in a couple of weeks, and I think will be a very strong base for another year ahead. Do you want to take over there?
Thank you. So when we uplifted our last guidance in October, we have guided on a total revenue of 61 to 65 million per year end, which is an uplift of 23% year over year. We have also increased our total ARR in the range of 68 to 76 million, which is again an uplift since the last two guidance we had previous. If we look at our Our total revenue, it is represented at Q3 of 46.6 million, combined by our subscription and transactions, which is a growth in both parts, but mainly in transactions in 2022. And furthermore, we started in the summer of 2022 to also report a little bit on our what we call committed future revenue. So our general contracts are based on a yearly subscription fee paid upfront, which means that when we say committed revenue, it is committed revenue to what is coming in both Q4 and 2023. And as long as we see an increase, it's a positive signal that we increase our value of our contracts or the number of contracts that we have. If we look a little bit into the EBITDA, we started the year with a minus of 2.6, but as you can see on the graph, we are moving towards a 0 in the half year, and then 1.7 in the first quarter of 2022, a 0 in Q3, and a plus in Q4 of 1.4, and aiming to get an EBITDA at year end between 0 and 3 million. On the total ARR, we have at Q3 reported 69.9 million Danish kroner, which is a combination again of our subscription and the transactions, which is an annual or year-on-year growth of 36%. Then if we go to some key SaaS highlights, our number of clients at end Q3 was 111, and they have an average value per contract of approximately 600,000. So even with the growth in our client base, we maintain the fair and good solid average growth of our contract on 600,000. In 2021, actually back in 2020, we started focusing on extending our international footprint. And in 2022, we have up till Q3 managed to get 44% of our clients win are coming from international markets, and the value of those contracts are also represented as 46% of our total new contracts in 2022. If we go to the net retention rate, remains positive. We want it to be above 100, and per Q3 it was 102, and providing a customer acquisition cost of only 160,000 Danish kroner. It's not a necessarily target or necessary target to get a very, very low customer acquisition cost. However, it is a focus on our general cost as well as what we spend our sales and marketing cost on, which has provided us a lower number in 2022. And that is giving a month to recover on CAC for 4 months. A little bit on the cash flow. We started the year of 2022 with 20.6 million, and over the first half year, we have spent almost 7 million at investments in our platform, and a few 1.6 million on the finance, and then cash flow from operations of a plus 500,000. Q3 is historically a period of time where the cash flow from operations is negative due to the number of signed contracts and number of inflow of cash, while we maintained our investments at the same level. And on the cash from finance side, we repaid 2 loans in July, which left us to minus 2.5 million in cash from financing and a cash at Q3 end of 1.9 million. What we expect from the full year 2022 is that we will have a full year cash flow from operation is positive. We will maintain our investment level, and the cash flow from finances will be reduced compared to Q3, as that was impacted by the 2 repayments of the loans in order to secure less interest in the future. If we then look at our latest guidance, we have talked a little bit about it. We are at 69.9 million in total ARR per Q3, which is in the range of our total guidance for the full year. Our transactions may fluctuate quarter per quarter, So that's why we have maintained at the 14th of October those guidance so far. And if we look at our strategic goals, we will aim for a double-digit growth in our ARR from subscription, a positive EBITDA, and a positive cash flow from operations.
Yeah, I just want to come up with I think it's quite important to mention, as this is how we are, this is what we have delivered in Q3, this is how we see the end of the year, and how we look at the future. And I think it is quite important to mention that we are quite proud that we are delivering a profitable growth. And this is a 36% ARR growth is in the level that we were expecting to grow for this year. Still, I keep it always it's a healthy growth. And if you look at it, the future, we try to define a couple of the elements that are why it is the right the base for Agillic growth is that our strategy, the growth strategy, is absolutely intact, and this is what we have been following for the last 3 years. We are expanding our market presence in multiple different geographies, and we are doing it in the same way, in the same scalable way, in the way that it is bringing us the business, which is the partner-driven acceleration. We are looking into our customer success and optimizing it into this maximum. Now, why is this important? It's because net retention rate, which is all driven by our customer success programs that we are running, is still one of our key North Star metrics, because retaining our clients, eliminating churn, eliminating downgrade is one of the key parameters of our success. Now, I talked about market, and I think it was quite important to mention that the digitalization, the digital transformation, and customer centricity, and focusing on your first-party data, which is basically your most valuable data, is your first-party data, retaining your customers, still the number one priority across the board, especially into the new year, where it's really costly to gain new ones, but activating the existing ones is quite an important part, which we are focusing a lot of. And I mentioned also the IT investments, software, the way the market is seeing the software investments as one of the other positive areas. In regards to the software perspective, I also would like to mention that I've spoken to many of the CEOs, and what I've realized that there is a common theme going on across the board. And the theme is basically, they're all running this thing. What do we want to keep? What do we want to expand? And what do we want to cut? And this is the kind of a theory, the process they're running one by one right now for the next year's budgets and investments. And we see that multiple times that Agillic is being seen as we need to keep it. And if possible, we want to expand it, which is basically new channel executions, new activation of new growing database, because that's a business delivering software that they're working with. So this is one of the points. Our platform is ready for the growth, as I mentioned earlier, that we are now looking to new markets. And as we look into the new markets, we don't have to do anything specific for our platform. Platform is ready. We can expand to the next ones as we go through. And it is also important to mention that our ecosystem of different partners that we work with, they are also international, and we are doing this collectively. So as a group of companies who are focused on creating value for the customers that we are getting engaged with. And our organization is fully in place at the moment. We have all the right elements, from thought leadership to center of excellence to finance to management altogether. We're in the right place for the right growth. So this is what we wanted to share with you today, and we would love to have your questions, if there are any.
Perfect. Thank you very much. There's a lot of questions here. So, but let me start first. Emre, you touched upon it, but if we start with the Forrester study, you mentioned that approximately 70% of the key decision makers are expected to increase the investments in omnichannel marketing automation technology. And taking the current macroeconomic uncertainty into account and these things going on right now, do you still expect this, or do you see this number as the same, or the same level as this study? And also in terms of the resilience of your platform, how sticky do you see the platform of Agillic?
There are two different questions, so I'll just take one by one. Number one, the study still, I think, is very valid, because there's an increasing focus on software investments. But as I said before, the software investments are qualified in 3 different categories that now: keep, expand, or cut. Now, how do they define this? It's basically return investment. And this is the second part of your question. How do we see our stickiness? Is basically the way that we deliver the results in that short period of time that we actually start the engagement. For our existing clients, that's what I call, this is still a North Star metric for us, that, customer retention, this is our focus. But that is basically the business results that we have been delivering for them is the reason that we are with them in the next years. Now, for the new prospects, as we bring the return on investment in such quick phase, they can actually see the results that they are generating, and that's why we think that our growth rate will continue.
Yeah, cool, perfect. All right, so you also mentioned the strategic goals, and I think it was about double-digit AR growth rate going into 2023. And some positive EBITDA and positive cash flow from operations. But there's a question out here asking whether you are giving a more detailed guidance for 2023 and when.
So that decision is, of course, up to the board to decide. And those discussions are internally made there before we decide whether to give guidance. We have done that in previous years. We have seen some companies that have chosen not to give guidance because of the uncertainties, but we will revert on that when the board has made its decision.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. Moving on to
just an add-on. If I would like to add something in that one. I was speaking to some of the investors recently over a dinner, and the very interesting thing is they were actually telling me that they were quite happy to work with us because we have been extremely transparent for year over year on the number of metrics, financial metrics that we have been actually guiding on the market, and they could actually, without changing any of these terminologies, and they were saying that keep doing this. This is perfect transparency.
Yeah, agree on that, and maybe also on that. Do you expect them to split up the net retention rate, so both on upselling and on the churn rate? Do you expect that going forward in terms of reporting?
Then again, that goes back to Klaus's point that this decision has to be driven by the board of directors. But we will continue reporting the metrics as we are reporting on the SaaS side.
Perfect. And I ask here about upselling, but there's a question out here: how much potential do you have to grow your existing client base? So you have about 600,000 each client, right? In the value of them, do you expect this number to grow, or do you see some big potential in your current customers? That's the questions I can say for that.
I would say several things. Yes. First of all, backing up the things that Emre mentioned on what do our clients use our platform for. So once they sign up, they will often add new channels. They will often have a success rate with their number of recipients that they're entitled to communicate with, meaning that they will keep their existing base and actually add in new users, which is a solid sort of platform to grow and thereby also grow our potential with our customers. That's on the subscription part. On the transaction part, what we have aimed for in 2022 is also seeing that we have talked to our customers, we have let some of our customers meet other customers to tell about our communication channels with emails and SMSs, to say, what can you utilize that for? How do you secure that it's a good retention rate you can keep on your clients without spamming them and so forth? And that has also led to the growth and thereby also some sort of stickiness to our platform. So yes, there are huge potentials. Transactions, of course, a little bit more impacted by what happens in the market, in which industries, how does it grow, does retail grow, does travel grow, and so forth. So we are dependent on the transaction part, how the market also reacts.
Yeah, perfect. And you also a SaaS company that has delivered a positive EBITDA over the past years, but have you done more to focus on your cost side recently, such as sales and marketing? There's a question out here, and can you counter this with higher efficiency?
Let's put it first and foremost that this cost focus that most of the companies are talking a lot about this. This is something that we have started actually back in 2020 when I joined the company in March 2020. This has been one of my number one priorities, to turn the company into a profit-making, a healthy structure, keeping the growth on the side. And this is what we've been doing so far. As I mentioned earlier, if you look at a company as such, the largest cost that we have is our number of employees. This is quite usual for these technology companies. When you look at our number of employees that we have right now compared to last year, we have the same number, 47. Now, if you look at our size, and we are growing 36% on our AAR, keeping the same number of employees. Now, the cost might change because of the multiple reasons, but the number of headcount. Now, why am I mentioning this? Is because we keep agility, we keep automatization of our own processes, and increasing efficiency via these activities has been our strategy for multiple years. So yes, we will continue doing this in the new year. Yes, we will invest on not only headcount, on technology side, sales side, more on the marketing side, but these are all combined activities for new market approaches and how to get the most out of it. So yes, the answer to your last question is yes.
Perfect. Let that be the final remarks. Emre and Claus, thank you very much for presenting here today, and very valuable insights, and also thank you for answering all the questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
First of all, welcome back again. We now have the pleasure of presenting MapsPeople, a SaaS company within indoor mapping and navigation, represented by the new CEO, Morten Brøgger, and Chairman, Lars Brammer. Again, I'll remind the audience that you can ask your questions in the comment box below, and I will take them in the end in the Q&A session. And for that, I will just hand over the word to you, Morten and Lars.
Perfect. Thank you, Kasper. So we're going to show a presentation. I actually can't see it.
Okay, just push the start presentation if you...
Yeah.
I guess there's a button right there, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just a static slide. Can we go to page 1, please?
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. There we go. Now it works. Thank you. Sorry for that, everybody. So I'm going to give you a short introduction to MapsPeople, what we do and what we are helping our customers with. And then I'm going to give a short update on our performance here at the end of Q3 as reported to the market. Right? So very short introduction to everyone about the company. We provide maps for the indoor space. I'll get back to that later. We currently have more than 1,000, some of them very large enterprise customers. You'll see some nice logos a little bit later. We are in 5 offices in Denmark, 2 in Denmark, 1 in Germany, 1 in Austin, Texas, in America. And we just started earlier this year an office in APAC as well to help us generate more growth in the future in that region as well. We have a lot of years of experience building maps on top of Google technology. And I think right now there is more than 20 nationalities in the company. So even though we are a Danish company with a headquarter in Sundby, Aalborg in Denmark, we are actually a very international company in all our offices. If you want to take the next slide, please. Perfect. So just a quick introduction to the business. There's fundamentally three revenue streams in the business. One is what we call Google Maps platform. That is actually MapsPeople advising large enterprises who procure the Google Maps licenses from Google on how to deploy them the most efficient way. And that also means that they buy the licenses from us, and we have a margin on that. We actually only on that business include our gross margin from that business in our ARR and not the pass-through license cost to Google, which is significantly, but that's not reported on numbers. On the other subscription, on the other hand side, we do have a small Danish public customer who for many years has depending on maps, which has been made and maintained and updated by MapsPeople as well. And in the middle, we have what is fundamentally the current and expected future growth driver of this business, which is our Maps Indoor platform, where we are actually based on CAD drawings given to us by our customers. We're actually transforming them into a real map so that you can use it to find a way, you can use it to book a desk, and a lot of other stuff. And you can say that, populistically said, we actually help digitizing the built world around here as well. If you want to take us to the next slide, please, Mia. Perfect. So this is really reporting on Maps Indoor, and this is some of the contracted ARR we've had. I'll get back to that in more details a little bit later. But you'll see on the right-hand side, we're working in a set of verticals. I'm going to go through some of the trends because we see two different trends right now. So we do a lot of business in corporate offices, where we're helping large enterprises actually map their different offices so people can find a way, people can book a meeting table, people can book a parking slot, and a lot of other stuff. We work in the sports and entertainment industry. I can say myself living in California was actually MapsPeople who helped making the SoFi Stadium where the Super Bowl was played earlier this year. And you can see a lot of other very large sports brands that uses us to basically map their facilities as well. We work in the healthcare sector. We work in the educational sector. We work in the transportation sector. Airports are the predominant, I would say, industry in there. We work quite a bit also in conventions, large conventions where you need to be able to find your way out. You need to be able to see who is there. And we work to some extent also in the retail sector. So you see there's a whole new trend that is going on here. And I would say a lot of what we're doing is like in the beginning of a new industry that is rising up. It's fundamentally changing how you interact with where you are, whether you're in a similar way as if you were outdoor, you can actually now do this indoor. And that is actually being brought into how you work to a large extent. Me, if you want to take the next slide. This is just very short about how does it work, because it sounds simple. We just make a map and then you go forward. It's actually slightly more technical and complicated in real time. In the bottom today, we actually use the Google Maps technology, which is why we're a Google partner in this stuff. On top of that, we actually draw all the floor plans of a building that we get from our customer or the customer of our partner. And on top of that, we basically put a lot of grids in terms of the network, so you can help that to find a way. You can put statics, point of interest in, so you know, here's a big fountain or indoor fountain or a big painting. And on top of that, we or the customers themselves can actually put a lot of dynamic integrations in there. So you have a whole content management system. So you can put different things in. Imagine a stadium. It's not the same place. You have a hot dog stand all the time that can actually be moved around. It's very simple to basically layer that on top of the application. And in the top level, we actually also have a lot of what is called like dictionaries. So if you're searching for hot dog, it may show you the closest burger bar as well. Like it translated into food. Or if you search on a Budweiser, it tells you where to buy beer. So we actually have that in our content management system as well, just as a good example. Now, a lot of that and a lot of these industries work in a different way, and the use cases and the business rationale are slightly different. So if you want to take us to the next slide, I'll try and go through this, some of the trends that we see going on right now. We say that our value proposition is kind of like split into two purposes. On the left-hand side, you have get more done in less space, which fundamentally says, let's utilize the real estate that we have in the most efficient way. And on the right-hand side, we have earn more per square foot or square meters that you have. And clearly retail, convention centers, sport, entertainment, airports, a lot of that is actually on the right-hand side, where you basically, you need to be able to catch your audience, you need to be able to catch your customers, and efficiently make sure that they can find the right places to spend their money, if I may be populistic like that one. On the left-hand side, in the top, we actually have something which we call smart office. And there's a lot of smart stuff going in here. And that is fundamentally because we are in the beginning of a new wave where the way we work, whether we're in the office, whether we're in the factory, whether we park our car at the office or someone else's office, that's changing quite a bit. And this is actually where we are seeing quite a bit of momentum. And if I should explain one of them with just a little bit more details, it would be like the smart office. And smart office comes a little bit based on the back of what we call future of work. We all understand the future of work accelerated overnight with the COVID. And now that we're out of the pandemic, people are slowly getting back to work. But let's just face it, the majority of the office workers around the world are not spending 5 days a week in the office anymore. It is somewhat less. It can be 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days. And that is a trend that we don't think is changing. And a lot of very large businesses is actually understanding this to a much higher extent as well. And we also understand fully that if you only spend 2 days in an office and maybe 1 day is in this office and 1 day is in another office, you don't necessarily need to have a permanent desk or a permanent office, right? You actually have to shop around. You book an office or you book a desk for where you are there, just like you book a meeting room, and you'd like to book a meeting room which is close to the office you booked for that day, if you're in conference calls and stuff like that. And by doing that, you need to basically extend the booking experience. How do you actually book a desk? So you need to understand where's my coworkers, which desks is available. And you do that in a much smarter way when it's a graphical interface instead of just a long list of desk number 11, 21, 2 or B or whatever it's called. So we actually produce a map, a little bit as you can see the little drawing here. And then people can see, well, if I'm going to this building and I need to book a desk, then I'd like to be here. And by the way, I can coordinate with that with some of my colleagues. That makes it fairly smart, but it actually also allows the enterprise to understand what is the need I actually have for desks? What is the need I have for meeting rooms? And they can understand what is the peak requirement for how many desks do we need and how many meeting rooms do we need. And if you have more real estate, more desks, more meeting rooms than you actually need, which is the case for a lot of companies out there, some of that may be reinforced by a recession coming in or economic downturn, whatever we choose to name it. It actually allows you to say, I have too many square feet, too many square meters, I have too many desks, I can actually reduce that. And we know from some of the case studies with large customers that every time you can reduce a desk that you don't really need, it's between $550 and $1,200 a month that you save. So you can understand if you're a very large company with tens and thousands of desks, just being able to optimize that with 10% is actually significant savings going forward. And this is one of the places where we're seeing quite a hike in the interest to understand how do we do this different? Because it's what you and me and most of the people we know we want. We are not spending 5 days in the office. And clearly the financial officer says, why am I paying for stuff that we don't use? How can I very simply make a business case to reduce some of these costs? And it's some of the same stuff that we're doing on the parking side. Some of the same stuff we're doing with what we call smart factories, where you have a digital twin, you can see what's going on, you can optimize all that. And that's kind of a very new use case in a whole new industry that is topping up, where we are super proud to be the leader in that industry. And clearly that thing, we see a good trend, and we see that coming out of the pandemic and even going into what I would call a challenging economical global situation. We have a very strong value proposition where we can point to where we can help our customers or the customers of our partners to optimize their business in sustainable cost advantages. If you want to take us to the next slide, to me, please. And the next again, please. Perfect. This is the latest numbers on how you will see the growth from our company. You'll see at the bottom we have these maps we make for one of the government agencies in Denmark who depends heavily on maps. We've had that for many, many years. It's a fairly constant business. And you see the slightly lighter green on top is the contribution margin that we recognize as revenue from reselling the Google Maps licenses. And on top of that, you have the light green color and the light green bars, which is fundamentally our Maps indoor business, where you can see a very positive high growth development in our contracted ARR, which will then turn into high growth for our business as well. let's look at the next slide, please. This comes in that we have this contracted ARR of around just short of 60 million at the end of Q3, and we do expect growth going forward as well. We had more than 60% growth in our total ARR for the combined business year over year, and we had just below 100% growth year over year in our ARR coming from the Maps Indoor product. So you can see that the Maps Indoor product is fundamentally driving a lot of the growth. And we also in Q3 had a net retention rate compared to last year of almost 120%, which means the customers we have are growing nicely. And that means that the customer base we have will continue to grow a significant amount, will continue to contribute a significant amount to our growth. And if you will take the next page, please. This to me is also a super interesting slide. Here you'll see some of the cohorts on when we got the customers on board. The darker the color on the bars, the older they are. But you'll fundamentally see that the cohorts of customers continue to grow year over year. So you see here in a different view that net retention rate that I explained about the last page is actually super important. So when we grab new customers, when our partners grab new customers, you'll continue to see a growth from these customers going forward. It looks optically on the right that some of the cohorts are reducing. I understand, but that's because the bars on the right is only for 9 months, not 12 months. So we have to take that into consideration. So we do expect to see some nice growth in the cohorts here as well. Perfect. And then I think the last one I have today is it's pretty nice to be a relatively new employee in a relatively small, high-growth Danish SaaS company, and then being able to show people like you and even my mother some of these nice logos with the companies that we work on. I think when you look at such nice logos and such large enterprises working with a company like MapsPeople, you also understand that the value proposition actually makes a ton of sense. And I am very confident that we will continue to add equally recognizable, impressive logos in the coming quarters. So that was me speed talking through who we are, what we do, and why in particular some of the new stuff that we're doing is going to be very interesting in the coming years.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Should we start with the questions or?
Yes, please.
Perfect. Maybe we should go back to the one with the logos, because we have a question here outside for asking, are you exposed to large and end clients and industries which are being affected by the current uncertainties? And in that relation, there's also a question here about the stickiness of your solutions.
Yeah.
So of course we can see these logos, big companies, but can you tell us about the stickiness of your solutions and also maybe in terms of the resilience of the solutions?
Yeah, I think specifically where we see some of the high growth, I think the fact that we have a net retention rate of 119% is actually a very good indication that this is sticking, right? Because people who doesn't like your solution, they will not continue to grow and buy more from you. Like I always say, if the customers are buying more from you, it's a very good indication that they're going to renew their contract. So we have a less than 10% churn in our business, which was also reported on Q3 reporting on a year-to-date basis. I believe it's 6% year-to-date in the last reporting. To the other questions about the logos, are we feeling any resilience? I think it's the reason why I spoke a lot about the corporate office, the smart office, smart building, smart parking, is because we actually see an increase in the demand here. And the rationale for that, we believe, is because we actually help these customers deliver sustainable cost advantages. And if I should elaborate a little bit on that one, is like, I think most of us who's been working with SaaS on the investor side, analytical side, or running businesses, we understand in the last many years, companies has invested predominantly in things that could accelerate the growth. I think it is very fair to say that companies now are shifting quite a bit of their investments into what delivers sustainable cost reductions or productivity increases, right? Which means that, like we spoke about with the smart office, and we can tell the stories in some of the other smart solutions that is out there, both by ourselves, directly with the customers, but also through our very impressive partner channel distribution capabilities, is that it is actually a very solid business case that we're delivering. And over and above that, some of the customers are also using this to come into the whole ESG reporting, because how are we going to reduce our carbon footprint? And one of the things is, if you have a skyscraper on Wall Street in New York, and we do have customers in that particular area, and you say, like, listen, you book a table, but on floors number 9 through 11, you can only book until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. After 4 o'clock, we switch off the lights, we switch off the heating or the air conditioning, depending on what time of year it is. Then you actually can measure how much do you reduce your carbon footprint with. Over and above, you can also say, overall, we can reduce the number of square meters and floors that we have in our real estate portfolio. So it contributes on both of them. And on this part, the smart office, we see a very increasing demand. But like
and Morten, concerning smart offices, there's also a question outside about, and I think you have touched upon it, but can you maybe take us a few years back, or maybe Lars can be here also to help, but which structural changes have you seen over the past year? So maybe just before the pandemic, of course, there's been some changes after the pandemic, but also maybe take us a bit before the pandemic, and then looking into the past, maybe 1 year, what have you seen within the smart office segment? Do you still see some big changes, or is it more like a natural development over time?
Yeah, I think the smart office is very, very new. To be very honest, Kasper, it's pretty new. It's something that we started onboarding customers in the last 12 months. We probably started talking to some of them for the last 18 to 24 months, but it's a whole new thing, right? I think no one really understood when did the pandemic end. No one really understood what are the sustainable changes in behavior from employees. Now we're getting to see it, right? And we've all read the stories about large tech companies saying you have to go back to work, and the worker says, no, we won't. And then they come back, okay, you have to come back at least 2 days a week. So these are things that are relatively new. And then when you figure out, okay, there's something here that has changed, that will never be as it was before. Now let's reevaluate this stuff. That's actually relatively new. So to me, this is very, very early market, that the customers we have now are absolutely early adopters. And the ketchup effect, I would not be surprised if we see that in the coming years.
We can see that from the uptake from our partners as well.
Yeah, okay. Perfect. And you also mentioned it here, Morten, but there's another question outside here. There is a big discussion between employers and employees in the United States about returning to office. Do you see this debate somehow affecting the market potential for players in the hybrid office segment? Maybe you can just elaborate more on what you just said.
I cannot see that this has a negative impact on our business, because it fundamentally means you have to redesign how we do things. As I said, people will not have a fixed desk anymore. That's a consequence, right? You cannot, I want my own desk, but I only want to come to the office 1 day a week. You know, it's not how it works. So it will change. I think it's logic to most of us here, right? Especially in these very, very large enterprises that we see a lot of in the US, right? And that means that they have to change this. And these are the first movers out there. There's a whole new industry. We have a strong partner challenge, like very large facility management partners and very niche-oriented, high-tech partners who does this. We have a partner who does corporate parking slots, right? So you have to book a parking slot and you go in, and if you have an EV car, then you book an EV parking slot, and you can even put a sensor on it. And then when your batteries are fully loaded, you are asked to move to another one so someone else can get your charging station. It sounds like super simple, but you need a system to basically run and regulate that. And that's where we are helping facilitate that. So yes, this is something where I expect us to see quite nice growth.
Perfect. And just a final question here, Morten. As you said, customers are now focusing more on cost, and you can basically reduce some cost for them with your solution. But what about you? What is your your focus right now in terms of growth versus profitability?
I would say profitable growth.
Yeah.
Profitable growth. Be ready, be very flexible. Those who has followed understand that MapsPeople has actually delivered quite some nice growth, and our organization has also grown. And right now we're focusing on making sure that everyone is doing well, everyone is trained well, and everyone is delivering at a good productivity level, right? And being successful. But we are ready to be very flexible, depending on how the demand increases. But our pipeline is growing.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I think we are running out of time, so I would like to thank you very much for the presentation and also answering all the questions. So thank you very much, Morten and Lars.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, and welcome back to today's virtual growth days. We will switch a little bit track. We've been in the green agenda, we've been in the software, now we will go to the biotech. So welcome Ulrich and Andreas, who will present for Curasight. And I know you have a lot of messages, so I will not take any more of your time. So you can start the presentation now.
Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for inviting to the virtual Nordic Growth Days. My name is Ulrich Krasilnikoff, and I am the CEO and CFO of Curasight. And I'm together with Andreas Kjær, who is a co-founder, CMO, and CSO, take you through this exciting case. First, a short disclaimer. And also for the new investors, we know is continuously in joining Curasight. We have some highlights. First of all, Curasight is a Danish clinical phase 2 company founded back in 2013 by Andreas Kjær and some from his research group. It's based on more than 10 years of research from Rigshospitalet in Copenhagen. Curasight has developed a uTrace, which is a proprietary platform within imaging which can be used in several cancer types for diagnostic purpose. It has been broad clinical tested in 8 ongoing or completed phase 2 clinical trials. Actually, 4 is completed right now. Andreas come back to that. And furthermore, uTrace has also been tested in more than 400 patients, and by that proven to be safe. Furthermore, we are tapping into a very attractive market. I will come back to that, how it's expected to grow. Furthermore, we are using quite a lot of resources in order to strengthen our IP position on the with issued patents in the market we expected to pursue in the coming future. And furthermore, in connection with the IPO 2 years ago, we raised around 100 million Danish crowns, or approximately 13 million euros, in connection with the IPO, among others for financing the phase 3 PET imaging study with uTrace in brain cancer, and also to develop the therapeutic option with uTreat in brain cancer. Just some highlights. I will not take them all, but just for the new investors, we were awarded in connection with the IPO with 2 prizes from the Best IPO 2020 from the Independent IPO Guide, one from the Excellent Stock Price Development. That's not the case at the moment. And then also for the quality of the company and the case we have got to the IPO. We have initiated 3 preclinical studies on therapy part with uTreat in both brain cancer, neuroendocrine tumors, and head and neck cancer, and signed CRO agreement. We have conducted and completed 4 actual phase 2 studies in prostate cancer, head and neck cancer, and also neuroendocrine tumors, and also brain cancer, which we'll come back to that also. And then we have strengthened our IP portfolio with granted patents, both within the therapeutic part based on uTreat and also the diagnostic part with uTrace in both in EU and also US and Canada and Japan. And not least, what is also important for new investors, that we have initiated commission research with SEB and Capital Partner. And recently, SEB has published an updated report on the valuation range and also how they see the development of the company right now, which is also very interesting and for new investors, and quite a comprehensive work they have done. Yeah. If we look at the market, then there are some 3 main growth factors which is mainly a great aging population, which unfortunately also increase the number of cancer incidences, wider use of nuclear medicine around the world, and also introduction of new radiopharmaceuticals like U-Treat and U-Trace, which Curasight is developing, and that is expected also to increase the market for the coming next 8 to 10 years with a sixfold. So very attractive also for that perspective. Then I will hand over to Andreas, who will take us through the technology and also how it's expected to be used within the different cancer indications that we are pursuing right now.
Yeah, thank you, Ulrich, and again, thank you for having us. I'm going to take you a little bit about the proprietary theranostic platform we have, and we are working within cancer, and we are using UPAR theranostics, and theranostics is a combination of diagnostics, where our technology is called U-Trace, and therapy, where our technology is called U-Treat. And the nice thing is, and I come back to that, is that basically we have a compound which we can either make into imaging, that's U-Trace, or therapy with local radiation therapy, and I come back to that. Together, the two things work in synergy, so if you can see it lights up on the imaging, it's also likely, or you know, that your therapy will gain access. The target we are binding our compounds to is UPAR, and UPAR is a unique biomarker of cancer. It's expressed on cancer cells, in particular on activated stroma cells and where cancer is most aggressive. It has been found in many studies to correlate with cancer aggressiveness, and for this reason it can be used to find out how aggressive a cancer is, but it can also be used as a target for therapy because the cells that are most aggressive are the ones you want to treat the most. There's relatively low expression of UPAR in healthy tissue, and maybe one of the major importance of this technology is that it's not limited to one type of cancer. So our technology can be used across solid cancers, where 80% of all these cancers are UPAR positive. I'll just see. UPAR is, as I said, prognostic in cancer. It has been shown in more than 200 publications, not with our technology because we are doing non-invasive imaging, but on tissue samples from patients. Therefore, it can be used for risk stratification, and this is very important in the management of cancer patients. I come back to that. The more aggressive the cancer is, the higher UPAR is expressed, and this is, of course, very important, as the most aggressive cancers are the ones needing the therapy the most. And finally, the distribution of UPAR is not homogeneous within a tumor. So the more aggressive the cancer cells are, the higher the target is expressed. And in this way, we get an intelligent distribution of our therapy. We do give more therapy to areas of the cancer that need them more. And that this is what is called dose painting. This is basically the concept, coming back to the initial slide on theranostics. What you see up here is in red the UPAR receptor, which is at the cell membrane of the cancer cells. We then have a binding peptide here illustrated with an arrow A105 that binds to this target. And then we have two versions of this binding peptide, namely one for imaging, what we call U-Trace. It's harmless radioactivity that can be used for scanning, and U-Treat, that is not harmless because it provides short-range radiotherapy. And why is this short-range radiotherapy the new way to do radiotherapy? It's because it's radiotherapy that you inject. You inject it, that is the person in the middle. You inject this compound with radioactivity. It circulates in the body and binds everywhere where we have the cancer cells expressing UPAR. And then it sits there and provides radiation therapy, but only with a range of 1 millimeter. In this way, you get almost no radiation of adjacent tissue, but only where you have bound your tracer. In comparison with that, on the left is the traditional external radiation therapy, where you irradiate from the outside, and you have to go through healthy tissue. So first of all, targeted radionuclide therapy in general will be more gentle, but it's also a thing you can use if there's widespread spread of your cancer, if there are many metastases, because there's no way you can try to externally irradiate a disseminated cancer, because you would simply give too much radiation to the body. So for this reason, many believe this is really the new way to do radiotherapy, and I'm sure we will see a lot of activity in this space in the future. As earlier mentioned, we are not limited to one cancer type, in contrast to a lot of other technologies. You might have heard of some of these targeted radionuclide therapies. They go for instance, for PSMA, that is specific for prostate cancer, and therefore they are limited to the cancer that expresses it. As we chose UPAR, which is broadly expressed across solid cancers, we have the luxury, but also the challenge of selecting which cancers we want to pursue. And of course, the driver here is, where do we conceive, where do we see the medical needs to be, the unmet needs to be highest? Where is there no real good therapy today? And for this reason, we started out pursuing brain cancer. I come back to that. It's a very harsh cancer with little treatment options today. We pursued prostate cancer on the imaging side. I also come back to that in more details. And then on top of this, recently we expanded our strategy, so we now also are pursuing therapy and imaging both in neuroendocrine tumors and head and neck cancers. And also these two cancer types I will briefly touch upon at the end of the presentation. If we start out with brain cancer, or the brain cancer type called glioblastoma, there's really an unmet need for better therapy. There are 65,000 new cases of brain cancer in the US and EU annually. Of these, 30% are high-grade gliomas, of which most are glioblastomas. Unfortunately, 10% of these cancers are in children, and all of these patients today, or the vast majority, receive external radiation therapy. So we know that radiation therapy is the way to go, but we want to do this in the more gentle way with targeted radionuclide therapy. The standard of care is radiation therapy combined with a chemotherapy called temozolomide. And despite all what's done today, the patients only survive for a median of a little more than 1 year. After 5 years, only 1 in 20 patients are still alive. And since 2005, there has been almost no improvement in therapy, and the standard of care is still the same as in 2005. So we believe that something is needed to be game-changing here. And of course, one of the things is to make this injected radiotherapy. We combine it, as explained, in a theranostic approach with imaging, and what you see here is actually imaging of a patient with U-trace. And as the paradigm is, what you see is what you treat. The cancer in the middle that lights up red takes up our imaging tracer, and since U-treat is merely, it is the same compound, the same binder, but it's just the type of radioactivity that is changed. This image will predict where our therapy will go. And in this case, high uptake in the tumor, so high likelihood of effective treatment. This is just to reiterate what I already touched upon. Why is this injected targeted radionuclide therapy more gentle and potentially much more effective than external radiation therapy? And in the middle or on the right, you see the idea, just as the image I showed you, that when you inject it, it seeks out the cancer, it sits in the tumor. Whereas on the left, you see the concept used today on external radiation therapy, where you do irradiate from different angles. So you get most of the radiation, the red area in the tumor, but you get a lot of irradiation in the surrounding brain tissue because you have to irradiate through healthy tissue with an external beam radiation. And very often it's, or mostly it's actually the dose delivered to healthy tissue that will be dose limiting. So there is the potential of a much more effective treatment with the principle of U-treat. That was brain cancer. And our other main indication is prostate cancer. Even though we could also pursue therapy, there are other options here. So we are really up for here an imaging and risk stratification strategy. Prostate cancer is a very common cancer type, but unfortunately it has a large overtreatment. When I went to medical school, it was always taught that more people die with than of prostate cancer. And this is correct. The vast majority of prostate cancers will never become aggressive and spread throughout the body. But the problem is how to recognize those that do not need radical therapy, and radical therapy typically is removal of the whole prostate gland. This is not trivial because when removing the prostate gland, typically up to 70% become impotent and or get some degree of urinary incontinence. So you really do not want to overtreat. Unfortunately, because the tools for risk stratification today are not very reliable, and those are the biopsies. If you make them and repeat them a couple of months after, they will have another readout, and this is not because the cancer changed, but simply because where you did your sampling one time it hits the most aggressive part, and the next time it doesn't. For this reason, that everybody knows this is not very reliable, very often a better safe than sorry strategy is applied. That means the doctor will say, let's better get rid of the prostate gland, because then we are sure that there will be no spread. But again, if then impotence is what happens, and it was not necessary, then it would have been much better. And of course, the patient will never know, because the patient thinks, thank God I got rid of a potentially aggressive cancer, but in most cases, it would never have developed in an aggressive way. And our strategy and technology, and what we are going to study and already have data on, is how we can do this with imaging. So instead of taking these ungentle biopsies, then we can do the image readout, because UPAR is an aggressiveness marker. We can see how aggressive the cancer is. And this is the whole way that we want to replace this. It should also be mentioned that biopsies are hampered by side effects in up to 10% of the patients, because they are done through the rectum. So a lot of these patients will get some degree of infection, fever, and also bleeding is quite common. All things that you do not see with non-invasive imaging. And how does it look? This is a patient where on the left you see the red arrows are not indicating the prostate tumor, but the prostate gland as a whole. This is a cross section of the patient. And then in the middle you see the UPAR PET scan, and on the right you see the two images overlaid. So this is a cancer that lights heavily up with U-trace, and for that reason it should be removed. If this has been another patient where it didn't light up, then it could be left behind and followed. So this is the idea, and what our studies hopefully will prove in the future, a gentle way to follow these patients. At the end, I will just touch briefly upon our two added indications, namely neuroendocrine tumors, where there's a need both for better diagnosing and therapy. And here we want to pursue a strategy where we want to go for U-treat therapy of patients, in particular those with most aggressive cancers. And I can just show you some examples here. As you see in the middle, the colored tumor that is seen there is a liver metastasis of one of these patients, lightening up with UPAR PET. On the right, you see different variants of this tumor, all lighting clearly up. And we have shown that almost all of these patients, 97% of neuroendocrine tumor patients, are positive on uTRACE scans, and for these reasons, they potentially, almost all of these also are eligible for therapy with uTREAT. But of course, this is something that remains to be proven in the future. And the last indication we are pursuing right now is head and neck cancer, where there's a need for better diagnosing and therapy. It's the sixth most common cancer, with more than 500,000 cases each year, 115,000 of these in EU and US. And today it's hampered by a lot of side effects when radiation therapy is given, which is standard of care, because you do irradiate in many of these cases through the jaw. And for this reason, prophylactically, patients need to have their teeth extracted, because otherwise there's the risk they will simply have necrosis and in essence rotten. And this, of course, is very uncomfortable for the patient, and something that potentially could be circumvented, because by not irradiating through the jaw, but by an injected radiation therapy, we would circumvent this challenge. This is just to show how reliably we can show with uTRACE the prognosis of the patient, both the overall survival on the right and the relapse-free survival in the middle. So the blue, dark blue line indicates the patient with low UPAR uptake, and you can see in essence 100% of these patients remains alive or without relapse over our observation period of almost 4 years. Whereas if UPAR is high, you can see on the light blue that patients get relapse and unfortunately also die. And the way uTRACE is going to be used is that if you are in the dark blue category, then de-escalation of therapy, a much more gentle therapy, can be offered to these patients.
Yeah, and this is just to emphasize that strategic partnerships in diagnostics is a part of the strategy for Curasight going forward. First of all, it will validate and boost them and de-risk the case in general. It will strengthen our financial with non-diluting funding mostly, and then it will give us the power and speed to market, as we will be part of bigger organizations, and also we will be able to share knowledge, and by that, have a better position going forward.
Like, I'm sorry to be the hard teacher. I think if we should catch some questions, I think maybe we will get around some of it. Actually, this is where the partner, your potential partner discussion, is that future and current partners, is that on the diagnostic or across all indication area? Meaning, is it on uTRACE, uTREAT, the combined part, and across all areas? You know, you have a very wide range. So can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Sure. First of all, it's on all the indications, and furthermore, it's both based on uTRACE only diagnostic path, because there are companies only focusing on the diagnostic path in general, and then there are also only companies focusing on uTREAT, meaning the therapeutic part, and then there are also companies focusing on the diagnostic part, which we are pursuing. So you can imagine it's quite a puzzle right now for us to find out who will be the right partner for us going forward. That is also why we have been disclosing earlier this year that it will take 6 to 12 months mostly, or expectedly, before we can disclose anything about the partnerships, because we have to find out the right match. Also, how will the strategic fit be going forward with the partners we will sign up with, and also that it don't conflict within each indications. So that is quite interesting and good question, I would say.
And looking, so when you say 8 to 10 months, you will start, what we should expect maybe for some news flow looking into 23 is you starting to connect with partner on the U-Treat part. That is what I should look out maybe for a news flow.
That could be, but actually it's I would say discussions we already have initiated with different partners, but it's only, I would say when we have news about that, it will be disclosed through the right channels to the market.
Of course.
Yeah.
And then there's also a question here, you know, there is capital restraint, and we can get back to your cash burn also as the last question, but there's capital restraint. You're doing very broad indication. You first look at U-Trace and then U-Therapy, but I guess U-Trace needs to work before U-Therapy kind of works. So why have you chosen to you know, go the full way, you might say, before you have finalized and proven a maybe phase 3 study on U-Trace?
Yeah, maybe I can answer that. I think there have been scanned more than 400 patients with U-Trace technology. So we know firmly that U-Trace works, that it is taken up in the tumors, that it is prognostic in all these investigator-initiated phase 2 studies. So the idea with the phase 3 studies and the studies in the future combined with therapy is really to position them to make studies that support the label that we will get by FDA and EMA. So those studies need to be designed exactly in the way that you want to use it as a product. So I would say they are not undertaken with the purpose of showing that it works, because we know it works, but to get the solid data and the exact positioning in the different indications.
Perfect, thank you. We are running out of time. I'm sure we will meet you again in some other events where we can dig through all the questions. Thank you to you, Ulrich and Andreas, for taking us through your very exciting company.
Thank
you very much.
Now it's time for Shape Robotics, a Danish edtech and robotics company. And welcome to you, André Fehrn, CEO of Shape Robotics. You will take us through the presentation. I will hand over the call to you, André. So you have 20 minutes approximately, and then we'll go to the Q&A session.
Thank you very much, Kasper. So briefly about me, I'm the CEO of Shape Robotics. I've been here 5 years. I actually started as head of finance, then I became CFO, and now I'm the CEO of the company. But I've actually been here since the start of this company. So I have some slides with you about our history, our market, our product, and how we expect also the financials so far this year, and how we expect next year to look, and how we address all these macroeconomic changes that are happening in the world right now. So briefly, if I go into our history, I could say that Shape Robotics is what you call an edtech company. It means educational technology. The core in our business is our own developed educational robot called Fehrn that are used in classrooms with the aim of teaching the students basics within programming and learning how to use technology to solve real world problems. If we quickly dive into the history of the company, we were founded as a company in 2017, as you can see on the slide. But the research and prototyping began several years before, when our founders, Moises Pacheco and David Christensen, was working on modular robotics in a PhD project in DTU, the Technical University of Denmark, also together with the Lego company. The basic idea is that our robot is modular, and it can be taken apart and put together in hundreds of ways, creating a new robot for a new problem or a new task. In the history, you could say other important milestones for Shape Robotics is obviously the listing on Nasdaq First North in 2020. Other milestones I've highlighted in this slide is that in 2021, we changed the go-to-market strategy and broadened the company's portfolio of products when we acquired a new company in Romania that was specialized in building turnkey technology labs for educational institutions. This because we saw that EU was funding huge amounts into education and building technology labs all around Europe. Another milestone I took on this slide is in 2022, we established a partnership with Samsung. Samsung, like other large edtech companies, is also focusing a lot on education and are building their own technology labs. They call them smart class, and they're using complementary products that go into the Samsung universe, such as robots, and hence they're building this ecosystem around Samsung. This means that our robot can be an add-on when Samsung distributors around the world are selling to educational institutions. Last, in 2020, we acquired another distributor in Romania called VTS, Video Technic Systems, and that was mostly to scale up our distribution network in that region. And then the last one I took in this slide is for the future going on. We're aiming towards getting listed on the main market in Denmark in 2023. I briefly talked about this, but our main product is the robot as a direct sale. And then also we're designing technology labs that often includes our robots. So that means we're both doing direct sale of our robot, but we're also selling these technology labs where our robot is a part of it. And then we're bidding on large tenders, mostly for educational institutions, school districts, etc. Both for our robot and for the labs we're designing, the idea is that it has to be easy to use for the students and teachers, and they have to learn several technologies such as 3D printing, robotics, virtual reality, and more important is that the lesson plans that we provide combine the technologies, and as much as possible, we make it something that reflects a problem they can encounter in the real world. So that means we built some of the foundation for the STEM fields, for the let's say the jobs of the future. Good. So the market we're looking into educational technology, the market we're addressing is rapidly growing. I can say that when I joined the company in 2017, and we were looking for funding, financing from investors, it was extremely hard to convince investors that edutech would be a growing market. But in the last years, and especially after the COVID, the pandemic, there has been an increasingly political focus on education, and especially digitalization in education with focus on STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, and math. So the market we're addressing right now is increasing a lot, and there are more than 4 million schools in the world. And as a parenthesis, I can say that we only sold to approximately 1,000 schools so far. So the market for us is still huge. As an example, the use of educational technology globally in elementary schools increased with almost 100% from 2020 to 2022. Of course, there is some bias to this, and it has to do something with the students using iPads or Chromebooks from the home during the pandemic, but still it shows a trend with the use of edtech, and that technology is coming into the classrooms, and we don't see that this trend is ending. Furthermore, I could say that the European Union is also having a high focus on digitalization. As a part of the Horizon 2030, European Union recommends that 20% of all funding from the European Union is going into education. Furthermore, as a part of the recovery and resilience plans from EU, approximately 13.8 billion euros, so huge amounts, is expected to be invested in educational technology in member states. And this is on top of normal OPEX, normal operations that the schools have. We as a company, we see actually the same trends, for instance, in Romania, where we are very focused on right now. In Romania alone, approximately 2 billion euros, 15 billion Danish crowns, is being invested in technology for schools. And that's allocated for something like 10,000 small technology labs, more than 1,100 STEAM labs, which are like larger technology rooms. And then they have an ambition to put in interactive displays in all classrooms in Romania. So it's a huge market. Good. And please stop me, Casper, if any questions pops up. Some facts about us and our financials. We have also, Shape Robotics, been on a rapid growth, not also because of this trend there is in the European Union all around the world right now. And our forecasted revenue for 2022 is 5 times more than we sold last year. And in all quarters so far in 2022, we have been breaking records compared to last year. Latest in Q3, where we became EBITDA profitable for the first time. And also, I would say from Q4 and onwards in the next year, and especially next year in 2023, we expect to be profitable in all quarters. So we're now turning this from let's say a startup scale up to something that is becoming a profitable company with a proof of concept working for us. We have done 2 acquisitions within 12 months, and I would not say that we're actively looking, because I get that questions a lot. Is that a strategy that you're buying companies or acquiring companies? I would not say that we're actively looking for new acquisitions, but we also have in the board of directors and in the management that if an opportunity comes in a focus market for us, it can be adapted, and it can be adapted in the business strategy. We are open for that. We think that there are a lot of these educational companies that are consolidating right now because the market is so rapidly growing. So, and also with this rapid growth that we have been through, we have closed some huge contracts. That's also, of course, why we could do the revenue we've done so far in the last year. And we also received investment recently. This has, of course, created a lot of positive focus on the company from investors and from media. And so far, our share price, I haven't looked today, but so far the share price is up 190% since we did the IPO in 2020. And furthermore, to my knowledge, we are one of the most traded shares in regards to volume, turnover, and share in First North Denmark. So that, of course, brings me to the IPO targets that we set when we got listed in 2020. One of the things we said was that we would grow more than 80% in revenue per year up until 2023. And obviously, from the numbers we already presented, we did that. So we have grown more than 100% every year in revenue, and now also turning into a profitable business. Another thing we said is that we want to reach 55 million crowns, Danish crowns, in revenue in 2023. And that one we can also take off because we will reach that this year. We're aiming towards 81 to 93 million crowns this year. The last one, positive cash flow from operations. That is one we put parentheses about because we believe that we will reach that in Q4 this year. But if we don't do that, we'll reach it in the beginning of next year. Some other about the company, we've sold more than 15,000 robots, so the proof of concept is there. As I said earlier, our robots is in more than 1,000 schools. We have delivered more than 50 of these STEAM labs, technology labs so far. And another thing I can mention is that, of course, our robot has patterns within utility and design. And a little bit about our guidance, both this year and next year. As you can see, as I said, the rapid growth that we've been through and 5 times the revenue in this year, we're expecting our revenue in 2022 between 81 and 93 million Danish crowns. Also, I could say that that next year we expect a minimum of 130 million crowns in revenue. And that is, of course, maybe Casper will ask me that question afterwards. It's a bit minimum 130. What does that mean? Well, it means that we have given official guidance that it will be minimum 130, but we also said to the market that we want to see what happens in 2022. And when we close that, we'll give more specific guidance on 2023, both in regards to the interval in revenue, and EBITDA we expect, but we want to see 2022 close or almost close before we give something to the market about where we expect next year to go.
Yeah, so André, you touched upon it here. Now you opened up for questions, so I'll just ask one of them from the audience. And you have grown significantly on revenue, as you showed here, but what are your expectations for your cost development and profitability in 2023? And I know you touched upon it, and you can give us a detailed guidance, but yeah, can you maybe just share your thoughts and on the cost side and your profitability focus?
Yes. Well, I can share that we don't believe our fixed cost. Of course, now we acquired a company, so more costs are coming in. We acquired that company at the end of August. So more costs are coming to our P&L. But we firmly believe that what investors will see in the end of the year will more likely be the normal cost base we will build this company upon. So we are very focused on every time we go out and make business that we keep the fixed cost as low as possible. Of course, it will grow because the company is growing, but we are building a variable solution as much as we can. That means that we are outsourcing our production. We are building a distribution network, so not hiring so many people to sell, but building a distribution network where we can push our solution to. So the cost base for the company will not grow in the same frequency as the revenue is growing for sure. We see, of course, there will be some growth in fixed cost, but we don't see it following the revenue. No.
Okay. Thank you.
Good. Then I took something about on this slide, market conditions and the macroeconomic changes. I think we all know that there is some uncertainty in the market. Every market, doesn't really matter which market you're in. There is some uncertainty now with the war, pandemic, inflation, etc. So I took some highlights here and how it affects our business and how we try to dismantle them. Yeah. So first of all, inflation. I think that's something that threatens all companies and all households right now. So there's a price pressure, but we also see that it's not that big on electronics and plastic, which is the most of our products. It's not that big as you see in normal average inflation. But of course, now you mentioned fixed cost. There is of course also, if my employees that have hired are seeing inflation in their household, they will require more salary. So it's not only about the prices and the cost of goods, it's also about there will be fixed cost increasing from another perspective also. So that of course we have to address somehow. And what we see right now is of course the company is growing as rapidly as it is. So the way that we can keep our margins as they are is economy of scale. So as growing as fast as we are, we can put price pressure on our suppliers, and of course eventually we might have to increase our prices. If we think macroeconomic, that's not the right solution for let's say the society, that everyone just decreases the prices. But looking at our business, we might have to do that in the future. But still, I would say right now we are still working on the economy of scale, which means that if we put 3 or 4 times as much into production as we did last year, of course we'll get better prices. So we still believe that the margins we're putting out there are fair and will withhold that pressure. Then of course, I know maybe Kasper will ask me that question. We are now riding on a wave, so to speak, in Shape Robotics. A lot of educational technology companies are doing that. There's a high political focus, and of course, if that focus changes, let's say the EU or the world, for instance, is not focusing anymore on education. That of course will change the scenery for us. But having said, I would say that I don't believe personally that education and technology and education was something that is decreasing. I actually think it will have more and more focus as we go along. because I think we all know that digitalization is something growing faster and faster, which means that we have to teach our young students, also people like me, we have to be able to adapt and learn new technologies all the time. So I don't believe personally that this will stop. But of course, if somewhere along the road that the education is no longer a focus, this will be this can be a danger for the company. And therefore, of course, we must adapt as quickly as we can if there is something political changing. Another thing I took in is lack of component shortage. I think we all saw that we had a perfect storm. There was a COVID, then the Suez Channel was blocked, and then there was a war, and it all created a crisis in international production. We handle that by increasing our inventory. Of course, that creates a cash issue because you need to build the inventory. It requires working capital, but that's how we try to handle that. The last thing I would say, the pandemic, and it's a double-edged sword for us, because will there be another pandemic? I don't know. I don't think so. But for us, the pandemic actually created opportunities because there was suddenly an even more high focus on educational and technology. Good. Kasper, the last slide I actually have is something about our focus areas. So I can say that our focus right now is Romania, which actually are the best-selling country for us right now. We are also, I would say, market leader in Denmark in education technology. And then we have some focus area where we believe the next market will arise. And it's mostly Central Eastern Europe we're looking at. They're also receiving huge funds from the EU to invest in educational technology. But we're also seeing some trends in UAE, America, and Australia. So that's where our focus is right now. Yes, who we are. I don't believe that's so important for the presentation, but Kasper, actually, I think that was what I wanted to present today.
That's perfect. Let's go to the questions then. And yeah, so you mentioned before, André, about the political focus. You don't think this will change in terms of the edtech focus and investing into this, but what about in general, if we see a large economic contraction, maybe in 2023 and or maybe in 2024, but how do you think how does the public budgets work in terms of your projects and orders? Maybe you can tell us more about the Romanian project, about the EU project, and the risk about that. Can that be changed if the economic will go down or something like that?
In theory, no, it cannot be changed. So the funds in EU are already allocated. There are budgets, let's say plans for the member states that are approved by the EU. So if they don't live up to the plans they presented, and when they want to spend the money, then they lose the money. So I know that the member states have all intentions to follow through the plans that they presented to the EU. I really can't, we're talking force majeure if something happens here in these plans. One thing could be Hungary, for instance. They got their frozen because of political issues and not spending the money correct. And but if you live up to all the expectations that EU have and the budget you made to EU, then you have to spend the money, otherwise you lose them. So it's basically this is EU printing money, just like they did with Marshall help. They're printing money to get something going out in the countries, with the label that you have to spend the money on education and infrastructure and green technology, etc. So they have to spend the money, and so I don't see any. It's only force majeure. Let's say a war breaks out in Romania or in Bulgaria.
Yeah. What if we take it to Denmark? So let's say there's also a question outside from the audience about this, and let's take it to the Danish system. And of course, you're not selling that much in Denmark compared to Romania, but compared to Denmark, if we take the public budgets in Denmark, could that be cut in a situation where we are seeing a contraction in the economy? You know, the public budgets and investments into your technology.
Whether Denmark, we could see Denmark investing in this? Was that
Yeah, could that be affected if you know we're going into a more uncertain environment? You know, the investments.
No, I don't think so. First of all, as you said, starting Denmark is let's call it, for us, it was a sandbox, you know, a proof of concept for our products. But Denmark is such a small market for us. So that won't affect our business, even if, you know, Denmark says that we will not invest in any technology the next 3 years, it will not affect our business. That said, I would like to bring up to say that for being a Dane, I'm a bit disappointed in Denmark that we're not investing more in educational technology. You know, I have 2 small kids, both of them going to school, and I see technology that are 15, 20 years old being used in the Danish schools. So being a Dane, I am a bit disappointed that Denmark is not trying to be the first mover in using technology in schools. But to answer your questions, no, contractions in Denmark won't affect our business, no.
Okay. And then there's also a question about the revenue split between the public and private schools in general. Do you have this to share, or?
Yeah, but I can share, but it won't be exact number. It's more like a feeling, but the feeling is very strong.
Perfect.
It's mostly public schools, so it's very much funded by governmental business to government funding. So it's mostly public schools, but we also see a traction that what often happens is that private schools wants to be the first mover. So if they see a traction that public schools are now getting this funding, they will start buying it before the public schools. So what we saw in the beginning of this year and late last year was that the private schools were buying what we're actually selling right now to governmental. But going forward, I would say it's 80-90% to public schools.
Perfect. And just a final question here, André. So you talked about your acquisition strategy, and you have also acquired some companies over the past years, 2 years at least, or about in that. But what about the retention rate on the employees that you are acquiring from these companies? How are they still in the company, and how do they be motivated to stay in the company?
I've never had that question before, but very glad to get it. We have so far 0 employees has left the subsidiaries after we acquired them. So that's the easy answer. No one has left the companies.
And you often acquire the companies with your share, right? So they got shares in Shape Robotics when you acquired it.
Yeah, the owners would get that, not the employees.
No,
but of course of course, often when you acquire a company, you want to make sure that the key employees stay motivated.
Yeah.
Because we're buying goodwill and know-how. So of course we make some programs for the key employees to make sure that they stay motivated and they want to be there. But the retention rate is that no one has left the subsidiary so far. We've only hired people.
Perfect. Well, that will be the final remarks. So we are running out of time, but thank you very much, André, and pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
And welcome back to everybody. We will continue with a rematch joined by Laurits, Deputy Chairman, and Nikolaj, CEO. We had the agenda 23, and I think with your company being pressured from the outside, but also with your Dutch facility going on, I guess this is a good company to try and discuss 23 with. But Nikolaj, you can take the words from here.
Right. Thank you very much, Michael. Welcome everyone. We'll go through a short presentation and take questions as we go along. First of all, a short intro to me for those who don't know me, as co-founder of the company and CEO. And I've been with the company since we started and built the Danish factory. And today I am the CEO of the company. My previous career, I was a lot in finance in London. So just a brief intro to myself as the first. But today it's all about rematch, so let's go into it. The first thing is really what has happened as Rematch from the first days until now. I will focus on a couple of things, but one of the key things is that we started the production in Herning in Denmark in 2016. So we know what we're producing. We've done that for more than 6 years, almost 7 years now. In January, it will be 7 years. We have, over this period of time, received a lot of certificates and verifications. We also have NAP, Nordic Alpha Partners, invested us in 2019 to progress the factory, build a blueprint to build the new factories from then on. And that culminated with the Dutch factory, which we are almost opening. We have here last week actually run the first test down there. So it's been assembled during the year. And that is on the back of an IPO we did last year, where we stated that we thought we could build a factory within a year. Despite some people not believing that we could do it. We have been able to do it. I'm very proud to say that the machine you can see here on the top right-hand side is actually in Tiel in Holland now. So that's very important for us. And of course, other things that are important is in France, we also have a joint venture in this period of time, and we're very close to signing the last few documents to get that road. But also developed a lot in the last year, maybe even 2 years. And we recently just made a collaboration on sound panels for various purposes. So all in all, very interesting. So that's the timeline. What is the problem that Rematch is addressing? Is really a fantastic industry. The turf industry, it's a growing industry. It's something that people love to play on. It's become extremely popular in all regions of the world. Europe, very, very big. North America, the largest single market, but China and Asia is very, very big as well. Here you can see a picture. You can play football even in the mountains of Oman. You can play anywhere, anytime, any day you like. The only issue really is the lack of a good solution once this turf has reached its end of life. You can see here in the middle, there's a couple of scenarios here, what you can do with the rolled up turf. You can put them on landfill, legal or illegal landfill. And that, of course, generates waste. One pitch alone is about 250 tons of waste. And the face fibers, the green grass that you see, is almost about 1.4 million plastic bags. So it's a significant issue, but at the same time, it's a great industry, the turf industry. So what do we do? And that's where Rematch comes into the picture, because we've developed a solution that we've been running in Herning for 6, almost 7 years, and we're running in Tiel very shortly. Is that we roll up the turf as you would if you went to incineration or landfilling, put them on a truck, drive into our site, where we then use our patented mechanical separation technology. And in that process, we downsize it. We basically shred it apart. That's the shredder you see behind me, actually. That's the machine you use. And then we dry it to get the sand really dry. Otherwise, we can't separate it. And we separate it into clean products. In this process, we don't add any chemicals, no water. We don't subtract anything from it. So it's a pure mechanical separation with no additional waste streams. So what do we get out? We get mainly these products out on the back end here. The fibers, the green you see here, the sand and the rubber are the main components that we then sell on to other industries. And what do we from an environmental perspective then do? I think it's also important to focus on, because you could, of course, dispose it as we saw before. You could burn it, but you can also use our methodology. And we had measured our footprint, which is the first one here, which is the recycling. We emit, checking in the transport to the factory, running the machine, sending the products out again. We emit about 17 tons of CO2. And incineration, which is the most probably the most common used methodology to get rid of this, is about 400 tons more. You see it at the bottom of the page, 417 tons. It's about 400 tons more CO2 per pitch. And that is quite a lot when a facility like ours in Thiel can process up to 250 pitches per annum. Then suddenly it amounts to 100,000 tons of CO2. So from that perspective, from an environmental perspective, it's very important that we get these turfs in and recycle them instead of incineration. So that's important. One of the other really important aspects to understand here is the predictability and the scale of the industry. I often get questioned into why do you in this niche product, or what happens if, and those are good questions, but one thing you have to understand is this is a huge market. I said before that we could run 250 pitches in a factory, a huge factory. If you look at the slide here, you see on the left-hand side in 2019, on top of there it says 41. And what we took all the turf square meters that was installed in 2019, put it on the ground, and divided by the average football size, just to make it more tangible. And that amounts to 41,000 football pitches installed globally. And that's the scale. So when I say I can recycle in a factory that we're just building now 250, and we installed 41,000 pitches in 2019, that is the scale. And then we come into the predictability. The predictability is really that it lasts for about 10 years a pitch, sometimes 8, sometimes 12, depending on the quality of the pitch, depending on the usage of the pitch. But on average, we see all the pitches we're taking in is about 10 years. We're taking in more than 800 pitches over the years by now. And if you then fast forward 10 years, on the right-hand side here, in 2029, you see the same number, 41,000 pitches. And that's the predictability I'm talking about. It doesn't matter what happens in the next 7 years, almost 6 years until 2029. I know exactly what I'm going to be doing. There's 41,000 pitches that needs to be recycled. And that is the predictability that you don't see in many industries, but we have it. We know what we're going to do for the next many years. We know the numbers installed in 2020. We know the number in 2021, and soon we'll have the number for 2022. So I can actually look about 10 years ahead in the business. So in my view, large market, plenty of opportunity, and also a predictable market. Here on the right-hand side, I just made a hypothetical solution where we would say we would have 100% market share. How many rematch factories would we have to build? And based on the 41,000 that you saw in 2019, 2020, then you can see in 2030, we have to build 166 factories to cover the demand. Of course, that's not our plan. That's too many factories. But just to give you an idea, that's the scale that we can build into. If we then talk a bit about the business model, we talked about we take in the turf, we sell the products afterwards. What do we really do? We actually get paid on various or multiple revenue streams, which is also very important because they're independent of each other. So the first one is, once we receive the turf, we get paid as if you dispose it on a landfill, if you burn it or incinerate it, we get paid about 20,000. That's an average gate fee across the factories that we have in our pipeline. And then when we sell the products again, the sand, the rubber, the fiber, that's into 3 different industries again. It could also be back in the turf industry, but it could also be other industries. That's 26,000 euros per pitch. That gives us, with the capacity of 250 pitches, about 10 to 13 million euros of revenue per factory per annum. So that's how we make the money. The front end, getting in the turf, and the back end, selling the back end products. If we then look how that materializes into further economics, then the construction cost, of course, we have to build a factory. And that is just the machinery, the equipment. So not talking about buying the land or building the building, but the equipment. So it is capital intensive, 10 to 12 million. The revenue, 10 to 14 million adjusted revenue per annum. The OPEX have increased over the past year due to especially the energy costs going up, but also in general costs going up to about 8 to 9 million. and that leaves an EBITDA of 2 to 5 million, depending on the factory, in the higher end of that in most factories. And then, so what we've done on the right-hand side here is just to illustrate how that could view if we build the factories we would like to build. Our objective is to build 24 factories in total, not the 166 that I showed you before. But if we did that, we would have about 14% market share in the world. And we would, over the time period to 2031, go up to a close to a quarter, 250 million euros in revenue and be very, very profitable. So this is basically the journey we want to go on and continue on. If we look at where we are today compared to where we were, say, some months ago or even a year ago, what you see here is one of the recent pictures of our factory. It is actually 20 meters tall, so it's quite big. And it has a lot of equipment in there. We're very proud that we built it on time, but that's basically what's going to start very soon to generate these revenue streams that I just showed you. But since we looked at this a year ago, there's been some discussions in the market about what you do with rubber in turf pitches, and we expected that there will be a rubber ban coming in, and I've addressed it a couple of times before, how that will address our business. We expected to come in at the end of 2022. It's just been postponed, the decision, due to non-agreement in the EU, but the EU Commission is basically sitting down and trying to decide on this. We still expect the rubber ban to come into effect in the beginning of next year. How does it affect our business? Because that's a question I often get asked. I don't think it affects us too much. We will see that we will have increased demand for recycling turfs that contain rubber. So we expect the demand for our product on the short term to increase. We also expect to see that the unregulated recyclers who say they recycle but don't really do it, that they will have an issue because they can't separate the rubber and the sand. So we would expect to see less competition from them in the future, and therefore have an even better market position afterwards. So that's really the main two things we see. We are already in our business selling our rubber to other industries than turf, because the purity that we get out. So from a sales perspective on the back end, again, it has little impact for us versus others in the market that will have an issue with this. We have also announced, unfortunately, due to the energy prices, where we use gas and electricity in the production, that we had to partially shut down the Danish factory to minimize the cost. That means we are running the separation of the components, but not the downsizing and drying, where we use gas. And we can do that on existing products that have been run through the first time, but needs to be run through again. So we'll do that for a period of time, while we at the same time do a couple of smaller upgrades and maintain the machine. So it's completely up to date once we are ready to run again. And we put in an order for LPG, which is a different kind of gas than the natural gas, and currently at a much lower price. And we expect that to come in at the end of Q1, beginning of Q2, and that will stabilize the cost base for the handling facility and enable us to run again. What other initiatives have we had? Because of course we need to address this. We've addressed it with our customers, and we'll continue to do that. But we see increasing prices on the back end, on the fibers particularly, but also on the sand and the rubber. And we expect that they will increase in 2023, especially again on the fiber. We expect to see a big upside here. But also on the front end, i.e. when we get the turf in, we need to charge, and we expect to charge the customers more in 2023 than we did in 2022. Of course, I think it's natural. All companies that experience these price increases in the production will go to the customers and raise the prices. And that's of course also something that we will do to optimize it. And finally, I just want to mention, I did that just briefly before, but we have used the last 2 years together with EU Commission and experts, a team to figure out what is the optimal solution for our fibers. We have a lot of these fibers you can see in the pictures. We have in the beginning found a couple of smaller homes for it, but we're actually now seeing and reaping the benefits of the efforts that we put in the last 2 years. We just launched a collaboration with AccuPanels, where we basically make soundproofing in design, and we have and we see a huge potential here and a huge upside in the business. We hope to be able to show that in the numbers soon, but that's definitely something that we had not expected a year ago to see this significant upside. So that's quite nice to see that some of the efforts are now coming to fruition. Sorry. So that's really, I think that's, Michael, I think that's the end of the presentation.
Perfect, Nikolaj. I want to touch upon one of your expectations. You have the higher energy cost and say, I also need to raise my prices. But and I'm not saying it can't be done, but I challenge you on the way that if it gets burnt, these rubber fields instead, they don't have higher cost. They actually maybe have a gain on burning that field. So how is that adding in? And is it because that it's not acceptable to burn those fields that some customers might choose to pay a little bit more either by you or some of your competitors to get it disposed this way?
Yeah, I mean, of course, that's a good question. I think you could see from my slide before that it's really from a CO2 perspective, also from a plastic perspective, it's really not a good idea to burn. I will say though, it's not easy to burn. Let's just talk a bit about what the composition of a pitch is. If you roll it up, it's rolled up, and it's actually quite difficult to burn anything that's rolled really tightly up. But 60% of the volume of what's rolled up is wet sand. So it's not something that the incineration is thinking, oh my God, this is the best thing after sliced bread. No, this is really difficult to burn. They actually have to grind it first, so it gets into smaller pieces. So they have to do some pre-work. So it's not something when you call up incineration and they say, can I just drop by with my artificial turf? And they say, yay. So that is the first thing. Then there's the environmental impact. And I think finally, I have to say that we cannot take in all the turf there is out there. I mean, we are full. We've been full in Herning since day one. We are full in Teal. We will get our portion, but there will be a portion going to incineration. It's been happening every year because we don't have the capacity to take in all of it. So I don't expect that we will lack turf pitches, if that's your question.
And it was more that your ability to raise prices, when the competition actually has maybe not the same disadvantage as you. So that was also, but I think you also answered that, it's not that worthwhile for them to burn it because it's mostly sand and actually not what, you get energy out of.
Yeah, the energy value is quite low.
Yeah. The high energy cost, does that change your develop plans for new facilities and maybe also where you want to be in the world and what you have already planned? I guess you are pretty fixed on the next facilities, but onwards on there, does this variability or big uncertainty in energy change your plans on how to build facilities and where to be in the world?
Yeah, good question. I think a couple of things have changed it. I think the war, the bottlenecks that we see, the energy prices, of course, they have an impact. And, we are focusing more and more on profitability in our business because I think all businesses have to do this these days. And that's a big focus for us. But in the long run, I don't see a change in what's happened. I mean, and the next plants we want to build after France and Holland, remember they're in the US. US don't have an energy crisis. US hardly have a recession. I mean, that's a great market for us. It's always been a great market, and I don't see any change in that market. On the contrary, we've been opening up the market from a marketing perspective. Dennis, our founder, went over there in the beginning of the year, and there's tremendous demand for us to build 4 or 6 facilities over there. So I don't think that we, in the long run, see any change. I think in the short run, we're just going to focus on Holland and France, getting those built up and have the pipeline ready for the US. I think that's really the game plan.
And then there's a little bit about the capital situation. You might not be that maybe be your biggest enemy in 23. Those situations more than the economic situation in the world. How much of the short-term building plans are financed by existing capital, secured loans, or subsidies? And if you want to raise capital sometimes in the future, will investors have data, out of Holland? Running fully, so we get a picture of this new facility that it will actually run profitable on in these current market environments.
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's always been our plan to continue to raise capital because it's a very capital-intensive journey. I said that before, 10 to 12 million per factory, and of course we want to build as many as we can because they're highly profitable. So that's the first part. What we've seen in the last year, which was a bit unexpected, was that we see the national or the countries that we go into are very eager to support it from a subsidy perspective. We didn't expect that a year ago, so that's a positive news. In terms of financing, for instance, the Dutch facility, I mean it's paid, so that's done. The French facility, I expect to be able to make a short statement about that recently. Sorry, not recently, but soon. But for now, I can say that we are very, very close to having everything signed that we need to, including the equipment, so we can move on. So that is not an issue either. And then we go over to the US, and for that we will need to raise capital, especially because we're looking to really make an impact over there, not building one factory at a time, but maybe 4 to 6. So we will look to raise capital in 2023. I said that before. And it will be debt or equity, depending on the conditions. But that's what we're looking to do.
And then there's a question here: should it be equity capital, and should you go to market and investors? Will it be on the, you might say, the shoulders of you showing the Dutch facility? It's
yes,
twice the Danish facility. I guess this is your blueprint for the future. This is where the data really should be, the data that you as an investor should value on or decide on.
Yeah. I think if you're looking at the Dutch factory, let's be realistic. We hope that the hot commissioning will end in December, it will start in December so that we're ready and we can run. And that means we will have a phase-in period for the Dutch factory. We expect that to take 6 months. So that means in Q3 next year, we hope to show the output numbers of the Dutch factory that we've set out originally. And it's clear that is, of course, also a milestone for us. And I think on the back of that, it would be a good point in time to raise capital, for instance, for the US market.
And for investors, maybe not in a process, we don't know whether you go to market, equity, or debt, of course. Will it be split out in the next year's reporting so we can start following, you might say the Danish facility, which is never supposed to really run that profitable because of size, and the Dutch facility, so we get a very clear picture on how the case is running in the current environment.
We will exactly do that. I think it's important for the investors to get visibility, especially in the Dutch factory. So we will try and come with reporting so that we can show these numbers, because I think that's so important for everyone. So yeah, we haven't said exactly or decided exactly how we want to do it yet, but we will come up with something so it makes it visible.
I understand it can be difficult sometimes to split some costs. And then a final question I'm thinking on: in the current environment, do we actually expect the Dutch facility to be profitable on which levels in 24? And I know it needs to run full capacity before we get the real picture.
Yeah. Honestly, Michael, especially with the developments that we see on the back end in the last year, I expect the same profitability I expected a year ago in the Dutch factory.
Perfect.
For 2024. So I don't see any difference there, and it's really because we've been developing on the back end quite a bit, and I could see that will pull us in that direction.
And that we will also see a little bit on the Danish side, I guess, the back end, if you are able to raise prices.
Yes.
So that's worth to follow 23.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you to you, Nikolaj and Laurits, for taking us through the company and giving us a sneak peek into 2023.
Thank you, Michael.
Hi, and welcome to today's, we continue today with the last presentation of today. We always said we would take a sneak preview. We now have a company that has given a little bit more than a sneak preview because you have guided Erik from WindowMaster. So I think we can dig a little bit more into it, but I think I will hand the call over to you. I know you have a lot of say, so I will not take any more time.
Thank you very much, Michael, and thank you very much for having this opportunity to present WindowMaster to a big, more Nordic platform. So let's shift slide, please. Yeah, and again, please. Just to give you an introduction to WindowMaster, then we are what we call a clean tech company, and I will come into why we can call ourselves a clean tech company. We actually have existed for 32 years, and we were established in 1990 by the Velux group, and then we were taken out of the group at a management buy-in in 2015, and then we were publicly traded with an IPO from October 2020. What we do is that we deliver what we call sustainable indoor climate solutions, and that we deliver into the building industry. We can say we are a niche company in a niche industry so far, and we are dedicated to what we call the commercial building market. That means education, healthcare, office buildings, sports facility, culture, shopping centers, etc. We are not in the residential market, and that's why you can say impact on what's going on macroeconomic at the moment doesn't quite hit us so far, so we can see. We are also based on, you can say, in a global context. We have sales subsidiaries in Norway, United Kingdom, Ireland, Germany, Denmark, Switzerland, and then also 2 places in the North American market on the east and west coast of the US, and we have our production site in Herford in Germany, which is very centralized for the European market, but also our global supply chain. So let's move on, please. Yeah. So what our solutions they consist of is that we make hardware. We also make software. The hardware is motors for controlling all different kinds of window types, skylights, facades, etc. And then we also make the controls ourselves, and we also develop the software and the algorithms that run our systems. We deliver into solutions like natural ventilation, mixed mode ventilation. That's where we mix with traditional mechanical ventilation. And then we are also quite strong on what we call smoke and heat ventilation in the global or in the European markets as such. We are, you can say, a part of the digital building systems, BMS systems. We can run our systems in conjunction with BMS systems, and we can also run our systems as a mini BMS systems, where we also can control solar shading, cooling, heating, lighting, mechanical ventilation. So we all about making the right indoor environment, which we control actually in many buildings with our systems. So that's a bit of the system. Let's move on. Here we see, just to get the principles of what we do, we have this cross section of a building, and here you can see there are some movements of, you can say, the red arrows. That is hot air that moves up, and we have the blue arrows. That's air coming in. And what we are really good at and we are very unique at is that we are able to control the indoor environment with our algorithms. We can control the skylights, the windows, facades, etc. That we are very good at, and we are quite unique in doing it with our systems. And you can say, what is feeding then the information for doing this? That is sensors that are existing sensors in a building, or it is our own sensors. So it's all about building the optimal indoor climate with using, you could say, actually renewable energy, because air is renewable energy. So we're not moving the air mechanically, but we are lifting up the air as a renewable energy. Yeah. Good. Let's move on. Also, when we say we are a clean tech company, that's because I would say we're going to be talking about our footprint later, but we also have a strong handprint. And what I mean by a handprint is that there is a real positive impact by using our systems in buildings. And what we do, actually, we mitigate climate change in buildings, because we can, if you look at compared to a traditional AVAC, that's a mechanical ventilation system, we can reduce energy savings from 50 to 80%. We can also reduce the CO2 emissions from 25 to 70%. And we can also use our system both they can be upgraded, repairable and flexible products, because that's also part of sustainability, actually. Yeah. So there is a real good impact on what you call CO2 emissions, reducing CO2 emissions in buildings. We also are working with a much more healthier indoor climate, and there are things like better results in tests for school children. That is from studies that we are well-known studies. We also this about reduction of sick building syndromes. That is also at around 65% if you use our systems in buildings, in offices, and you can actually reduce the sickness rate in buildings, many buildings, because of using our systems. And this we've also said before COVID, so it's still the same, yeah. But it just become more actual, yeah. Also, there is a low installation cost on introducing our system, because if we look at the life cycle costs of our system into a building, they are much lower than if you'll see a traditional mechanical ventilation system. So here there is a strong handprint impact from our solutions into the building industry. If we go on, then because we also have a strong handprint, we also have a sustainability strategy, and here we are moving ourselves as even though we are a small SME in a global context, we are also at the forefront of having a sustainability strategy and being a very good global citizen thereby. We have already committed, as one of the only few SMEs in Denmark, to the science-based targets, and we are also committed to that we will reduce to net zero by 2030. That's why you have this 2030. It's a bit longer out, but that's where we committed to. And we also committed to a very strong circular promise on our products, take-back schemes, and using more and more of our electronic to reissue and recycle. So that's also an area we're working a lot on. So we also have this strong footprint, and for our science-based targets initiative, we will be reducing even before 2030 what we should. But that doesn't mean that's where we stay. We are moving actually faster on this already, and it's a big thing for WindowMaster to be a very sustainable business as such moving forward. Thank you. Move on to the next one. In this 2022 in June, we actually also announced our new strategy. And here we have a strategy period that goes to 2025. We call our strategy Accelerate Core. And if we look at that, the strategy, then some of the key things that comes out of this is a promise to grow our business at a 10 to 15% rate top line over the next couple of years until 2025. We also and we have also the ambition to have an EBT at 10% in 2025. And how we're going to achieve this? Yes, in our strategy we have 3 strategic priorities, which I just will look at on the next couple of slides. Yeah. So these strategic priorities, that is what will bring our top line into this growth range of 10 to 15% from next year and then until 2025. First strategic priority is the integrated offering, because we have had, as a company, been very focused on selling our products from our factory. And about 80% of our turnover was originally from product sales. We are with integrating offering also going out. We're offering all the installation work of all the control side and get it to function. And we take the project management of doing that, so the system will work. We even also have some of the cable link for our systems to do. So we take control of the project management. And that means we also a lot more sure to get the orders in the end. And we have many examples actually this year of the strategy already working. That is, that's why that will, if we say the financial impacts on that is that our revenue will grow on the top line, because we are making, our offering, our value proposition has just gone bigger. We also very focused on our service contracts, which we have. That is, of course, revenue growth again, and it's also recurring revenue. Then we are into an area that is called refurbishment. And because we are a business that has existing for 32 years, we are now seeing a large part of the projects we are doing is actually refurbishment of existing projects we have done around Europe, in the UK, and here we get in with our systems, because it's our systems already, but they may be 15 years or maybe 20 years old, and here we get in with our new technology and we upgrade. And that's where we see something that we're working on is what we call faster turnover, because a lot of our business is project that goes over a longer time, and it's new build or it's a refurbishment of a building that we are not in already. But the market for refurbishment of our own old projects we have done, that actually comes in very fast as a faster turnover, and it's also with quite a higher profitability. So you can say those financial impacts, that's why we are saying that we are going to achieve our growth until 2025, and of course beyond that, but we have the 2025 as the time where we want to be also very profitable on the earnings before tax, which is a really big ambition for us, and we want to achieve that. So if we move on, then some will also ask us, why have you been so optimistic? We come back to our guidance, and why are we relevant? Yeah, I believe actually we have never been more relevant in the market and in the building industry as we are today. We are a business with a sustainable strategy, with a footprint, and our handprint is also good. We can demonstrate that we are also in a position to decarbonize the building infrastructure, both the existing building infrastructure, but also new build going forward. So we've never been better placed even though we are a niche company in a niche industry. But if we look at some of those, what is going to be driving our growth also is that then I'm showing you two examples of the industry we are working in. And the first one I'm showing is this is the AVAC, the mechanical ventilation market. That is in 2020 was a $206 billion market. And we are trying also to take some of that. I'm sure maybe we are only, the natural ventilation is only one, maybe a half. But can we just take 1 or 2% of all this, and the industry of natural ventilation could do this? Then there is it's a big market, and even the market for AVAC is also growing about 6.8% on average per year. So here there is the opportunity, because we are competing. Our biggest competitor is not who is doing similar products as us, and there are very few of those. It's actually a mechanical ventilation business, and here we have a really unique position and a relevance in the building industry going forward. Next slide. Another area that we also work into, that is the facade market. That is the industry of making glass facades that we see in many big buildings around, and window systems and so on. And here we also know that market is also huge, and it's growing. And you will see that here we see a very similar growth rate, 6.85%, but it's a growing area. But what we know is that, and what is what the industry is saying in the facade market, that is that there is an increase in use of sustainable and environmentally friendly products, so you can make facades that are more that help reduce the emissions inside the building. And we are very well positioned to be able to help the facade industry. And one of the biggest areas that will drive the growth over the next couple of years is actually the North American market compared to others, because there's a high need for a change. And we also know, and that was recently presented by the Biden administration, that, for example, the federal buildings need to go to net zero in the US, and the federal government is the biggest building owner in the US. So things are moving in the right direction, and you can say what is driving our growth is really you can say the green agenda, the North American market we're very well positioned in, and of course the relevance of our products and the way platform we have in the North American market and the North European market. Good. So let's move on. We have also we did last week. We came out with a guidance for 2022, and we're going to be in a revenue level of 233 to 236 million, and that matches very much what we have said earlier, and that's around a growth of around 10%. Then our EBITDA level has also been looked at, and we've come out with 14 to 16 million. So we are narrowing our expectation, because of course we are December now, and we know more or less what's happening the rest of the year. But what is very interesting, and that what rolls over to our guidance for 2023, is that if you look at our order intake the last 12 months, then that is at a level of 250 to 260 million Danish kroner. That means it's a higher than our revenue, and that means that trickle over to next year, 2023, And we've been seeing some very exciting projects come in, and we are still seeing some more coming the rest of this year. So that gives us the, you can say, our guidance for next year, saying a revenue around 260 to 270 million Danish kroner. That means we will be in our 10 to 15% growth range. And we are also expecting our EBITDA margin to grow and also grow percentage compared to the turnover. Yeah. And that is one of the key things that we are pushing for, is to really improve our margins, both on EBITDA and EBT. And that's also, you can say, we are on the way to achieve our expectations for 2025, where we want to be a profitable company that has an EBT of minimum 10%. So, and also what we can say is we are also a company, we're quite self-sufficient we generate positive cash. We also our debt level of multiples are going down, and we are able to expand our business also next year without going to a market for asking for more funding for now. So I think that is a little bit what I would say, Michael. So
yeah, let's dig into some questions, Erik.
Yes.
Then there's a question here. You guide 10 to 15% growth. That's in the building sector. That's a very high growth rate. You touched upon something. Have you included any effect of the EU Green Deal and the US infrastructure? Meaning, do you put something on top of your growth that already next year you will start to see some of this being implemented? Some of the bigger political projects that need to be planned and so on.
Of course, they all have impact, and they will have more impact. But it's not that we are saying that on. You can say we are in a niche industry, but we are becoming more and more relevant, and we can also meet the demands for the Green Deal, etc. So, but we are not putting that on. The market will grow for our solution, and that is quite clear. And that's also why I'm saying we're becoming a lot more relevant to market forces now than we were in the past. But it's you can say we would love to grow even more, but the 10 to 15% is what we're looking at now. But if we look at the North American market, and if you look at the US, then we are still very niche. 5% of our turnover this year will be from the North American market, I have to say. And we expect in 2 to 3 years, it's 10% of our turnover. And of course, we're also growing. So the growth rate in that market is a lot higher. And we will see, and we are beginning to see some very interesting projects coming up in the North American market, because they're going a more sustainable also in their building portfolios all over the US and Canada.
And so now we are touching upon the US, that there is a little bit of uncertainty in the business on how much needs to be produced in the US to get in under this. You know, we are starting an EU trade war. Can you elaborate a little bit on whether you have these issues? Is it enough to have sale offices? Will you also need to put some assembly into the US to really target the federal part of this market?
Yeah.
Any thoughts about that, Erik?
Yeah, but I can also say we don't have any other, you could say, US manufacturers of our products. The market was run by 3 small distributors, and we have bought one of them. And we are growing our business from that. And we actually have in our North Wales in Pennsylvania, in our facilities there, we are actually able to adapt some of our products already. And it's also our intention to move on to a certain manufacturing that is assembly. But we will never get to be American made, because a lot of the electronic stuff comes from Asia. But we are ready to move on more assembly in the US for the US market. and I'm sure that is something that will be needed going forward. And we've also said it. We have released to the stock market info about that we will be doing it going forward.
Perfect. So I just see a lot of debate out there about what you need to do actually to sell into the US market. Then there's something about this, you know, we don't know it, and you don't know the macro. I don't know it. Nobody knows it. But there is some kind of expectation of a big slowdown in the building industry, which you operate in. And you still guide this. So the question is, what is driving those expectations? And maybe also, if you can touch a little bit on it, is it refurbishment? Is it your recurring sales? Is it your order book that kind of gives you these things? And do you see increased order intake from refurbishment and other stuff that you might not catch when you look at the building industry as such, not building new, but you might have to refurbish a lot of stuff. So a little bit of elaboration on what goes into those numbers.
My view, sitting from as a CEO of WindowMaster, then I have to look at it a bit optimistic. The market out there, as I always say, always expect the unexpected. You never know what's going to happen, and we've seen that the last 2 years, 3 years, what things have happened. But for me, at the moment, what I'm seeing is a fog. But behind the fog, it's quite optimistic. And that's what I'm. That is what it drives me, and the business in WindowMaster. We've never been more relevant than we are today. We are working in the commercial side of the building, and we're not in a residential side. And I know the residential side, that is where there is a lot of difficulties at the moment. There is a slowdown in this area. But our solutions are going in. We are going in as a niche supplier to the industry, and that's why it can be done. We can look at the market saying we are relevant, and legislation and public investment and the need for making a more sustainable buildings, all that is driving the demand for our products. So that's what I'm working for or to achieve, to get a bigger amount of that. But remember, we're still a niche company, and we can grow quite well as a niche company in a niche industry.
So your order intake is your radar taking you through the fog, and on the other side, you are pretty sure what is happening. Then there's I don't know how much you want to elaborate on, but let's take a little bit further on the 23 Heine question. Your target is 15%. If you go to the EBITDA, you mentioned the EBIT. We can always. And next year you are expecting 9 to 10 there on the margin side, the EBITDA. And next year, as I understand it, you get some price increases and I guess maybe also some normalization in some of your input costs. So so that's 9 to 10, and I guess it's a lift of compared to this year. But you also need to do some lifting in 24 and 25. What is that lifting going to come from on the margin side?
Good point, because if you look at our business, and we had a price increase around 9 something, a general price increase 1st of January this year. But because of all the trouble and what was in the going on, we had PPV cost, and it was a very difficult time in the first half of this year, and that has really impacted our EBITDA level this year. We introduced what we call surcharges on our products, and that was between 5 to 15% on our product 1st of April. And so we were able to absorb those costs, but we also seeing that some of the costs have gone down, like transportation, and also those higher, what we call, we have to go and buy electronic products for our suppliers and so on. All that we're away from. So going into 2023, we still have that surcharge because that has been included in the prices. So we're going in higher margin. We're not having a price increase 1st of January. Let's see what happens. But that's not the expectation. So that is a carryover effect also from the second half and the Q4 into the next year. And that's why we're also optimistic about that our EBITDA margins will increase. Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. And I don't know, and this was this year movement, and you still also expect to raise it in 24, 25. Is that the bigger revenue going on? That is the biggest driver of that.
Yeah, that is the driver. I mean, you can say also efficiencies and productivity gains in our organization, and we're getting bigger projects, and we can move more because we also do some work through partners. Or we source in work from outside. So our fixed cost base is of course increasing over time, but we also see productivity go up, and something that has to go up because we are a company with a certain fixed cost base already, but efficiencies and productivity will actually increase our, you could say, our operating margin and our bottom line results.
Thank you. We got to the questions. Thank you, Erik, for joining us today and explaining.
Thank you very much.